I will call to
Cinderella,
order
two
the
pair of shoes.
Monday, June 9th, 2025 regular council meeting of the Village of Franklin. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Dana, roll call, please.
Trustee Gates?
Here.
President Goldberg?
Here.
Trustee Hansen? Here. Trustee Fierce?
Here.
Trustee Salter?
Here.
Trustee Salako?
Here.
Trustee Sawi?
Okay. Hopefully David's on the way. Next up is adoption of today's agenda. Anybody have any comments or a motion?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Any further discussion or comments, requests?
During the planning, is that when we should, take a motion on something to refer them? That the infrastructure committee wants, or would you rather save it for under new business under infrastructure?
How much time do you think you need?
Just to vote.
Let's do it, all right, let's do it as item D in new business.
Okay. It's just, to refer to them to look into a blight ordinance for the village, so I wasn't sure where you wanted it.
For ordinance, the planning commission.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a request to add an item D under new business. Any other comments or requests? Mike, are you okay with that amendment?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Pam?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Minutes from last meeting.
I don't think I was here for the, adoption of the agenda. I think I came in like right when you guys were doing the minutes.
Okay, so we need a tabs
You have a
there.
cold too?
No,
Oh,
I just lost my voice from,
talking?
So you note that and then note that she came in after that. Thank you.
Well, maybe that's instructive.
yeah.
I'll move to approve the minutes from.
Yeah, I thought it was good. I'm sorry, no, I'm sorry.
Did you already have a motion to approve?
No, we did not.
Motion
I-
to approve the minutes from May 12th
Second.
with correction.
Any other comments or corrections? All right,
I came in at public request and comment, so all of the ones before that, you can remove my name.
that's when you got there, okay.
Yeah, just so you know, I walked in when those boys were, doing their.
All right, all in favor of the minutes of our May 12th, 2025 meeting with the corrections noted? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. All right, public requests and comments. So we have a couple items on the agenda today, but if anybody would like to comment or address the public, please do so.
Jeff Kopelman, 30895 Oak Leaf Lane. I'm here representing the Franklin Historical Society. Last Thursday, we had our annual meeting, and I just want to give to the council members what we did at our meeting. It's our agenda. It talks about what we did last year. I'm just going to spend a minute going over it. As you know, the Historical Society's been around a long time, been part of the village for a long time, and we'd like to continue to be that way, of course. And we just want to bring council and the village up to date with 2024, which was a big year. As all of you know, if you just look under the accomplishments, I'm certainly not going to read them all. All I'm going to talk about are the really important ones. The most important, of course, was the bicentennial, which we thought was very successful. We had a lot of things on it, as you know. It went great, starting with the dinner and the square dance all the way through all the projects that we had, the Strawberry Festival and all. And we hope that the village enjoyed it. We sure enjoyed a lot of work, but we sure enjoyed putting it all on. We thought it was very successful in our goal of attempting to just helping get the village together again and making sure the village cooperates and does everything and just try to get everybody involved. So again, I'm not going to take any time to go over all these things. the two kite and keys, we always do all that stuff. A lot of it we do every year. Some of it is special. Again, last year was very special because of the bicentennial. So that's all I wanted to talk about for there. I do want to talk about, on the second page, about a couple of the upcoming events. The first one is this weekend, we're having an old-time baseball game, which we hope people will attend on the green. I think it should be fun. But most important, for the village, we are going back to, as you see, we are having Music on the Green concerts again, like we had years ago. The Historical Society is sponsoring all of it in cooperation with the FCA. We've spent a lot of time, like we did years ago. We have we're going to have some great music. We've got some really cool bands. We're going to have all the food like we always had. And as everyone will remember who has gone to it over the years, there were times we'd have 300 people there. And that's what we're hoping to do for the summer, to have the village together and enjoying themselves and really having a good time with it. So we spent a lot of time in doing it. We decided to spend all the money to do it again. And I listened to all the bands. I think you're going to love them. And I think it's 3 really great evenings for the village. And that's what we're really excited about. So that's the only reason I came. I just want everybody to know what we're doing with the Historical Society. Anybody has any questions, any comments? Yes, Mike?
50-amp fuse?
What about it?
You got them.
You think?
They're fantastic, man. Did you go see them, really?
Yeah.
You know who they are?
I don't know who they are, but
Okay. That's a great find.
yeah, we think, we've always had good bands. I hope
No,
everybody
but
agrees.
But they're a cut above. That's
Okay,
cool.
Well,
Now,
they should be. You know why? They cost more than anybody else.
Well, they were, that's what I'm surprised about.
They were, I will tell you, this
I
is
know.
expensive.
I know who they are. But my point is, you had said we're going back to Music on the Green. We never stopped it.
No, I understand that.
Okay.
But we're trying to do the
Yeah.
3 concerts,
Yeah.
just like we
I
used
think
to do.
it's great.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Yeah,
that
just like we
Historical's
used to
doing
do.
that.
And I
Have-
think
Those
the
are
idea
very,
that you're
very good.
I'm sorry?
I love the idea that you're collaborating with the FCA.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing with the FCA,
Yeah.
just trying to get
Well,
everybody
'cause
involved.
You did it for years as the bank.
I did. I used to do, I know. For those who
so
don't, yeah,
don't be
they don't
so
need to.
humble.
Yeah, I did it. My bank we used to sponsor it every year, as everybody knows.
Right.
The bank got sold, so, and we went back to it. We had a couple of meetings, talked about it, put the budget together, decided the Historical Society wants to sponsor it. So we've been working with the FCA, and again, we think always thought it was great for the village. So that's what this is about.
Right.
So-
Good job. Thank you.
Anybody has any questions in the meantime about it or anything with the Historical Society? We're always looking for volunteers. Let us know. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Thank you to the board. It's an amazing list of accomplishments for the year, and much appreciate continuing a full season of Music on the Green, so thank you. Enjoy.
very much.
All right.
Anybody else? Hi.
Hi, I'm Catherine. I'm a resident here, and I'm having a terrible issue with the geese on my
What's your
property.
address?
Huh?
What's
Yeah,
your
yeah,
address?
Please.
25505. It's on Tweed Drive. I have a pond, but I've got like 5 families, and they all have like 4 and 5 babies, and it's just horrendous. I don't know what to do anymore. I used to have the Goosebusters come, psh, no problem. You'd have a couple families, and I can deal with that. This is terrible. My yard, I can't step. My driveway is full of poop. I don't know what to do anymore.
Do you have the little fake
Ghostbusters.
coyotes and those items out on the lawn that are trying
We
to scare
tried
them away?
everything, yes.
Not
We
working.
sprayed, we put the, just sit there and look at you. And then when you come after them, I mean, they really are aggressive.
Yeah,
Yes, they are.
they're mean.
It's terrible. My lawn guy was gonna refuse coming to cut my lawn. He says, "You're ruining my equipment." And
I think we have a goosebuster here in the room. Charlie Haviland, you're here. You could handle this. Yeah. Okay, so I just wanted to check.
I mean, that was great when they allowed the Goosebusters to come because they took care of the problem. Now it's not fun.
Stop them
It's
from
really.
I own a condominium in West Bloomfield, and we have a huge problem similar to this. I will contact our HOA president and ask who they use for remediation.
Oh, that would be
Yeah.
wonderful.
Meg will hook us up, or reach out to Meg,
Just call
Meg.
the office.
Or call the
Call
office,
the office
yeah.
and give us your information.
and I'll try to get that information.
How long you think I should wait?
To hear from me?
Oh, yeah.
I'll
yeah.
call my HOA president tomorrow.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
All right, so
Yeah.
then I'll get in touch with the office tomorrow
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right.
Thanks, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Point of order,
Remind
are
me.
council members allowed to converse during public comment? And is public comment allowed to go over 2 minutes?
Why not?
I mean,
Exactly.
you're-
We're trying to
you're
help
allowed
people,
to
you know?
go up- You want to go up there and speak like as a resident?
No, I would like to
No, I
converse, but
think
we were
it's-
told the
Oh.
last 3 meetings we weren't allowed to ask any questions. And now all of a sudden we're allowed to converse. I'm just trying to understand what the rules are.
You can.
You can converse, but we're not obligated to converse.
Preferences.
Last meeting, I tried to ask questions and I was told I wasn't allowed
All
to.
right, I won't ask, I won't speak anymore.
No, I actually
That's fine.
enjoy public comment.
Real quick, just to add color to this, so 2 legal meetings ago, we had a discussion around how we were gonna conduct ourselves. One of the topics that was included within that was whether or not to engage residents. So again, at the time in that meeting, one of the things that I had raised was however we run the meetings, totally good with that. We just wanna make sure that we have consistency in how we do the enforcement of that, or not even enforcement, but holding ourselves accountable to that. And then it came up in the last meeting, which is why I believe trustee Salak had brought it up here.
I circulated a memo that echoed everything we talked about in the legal committee after that meeting.
Which said no response from council, correct?
Yeah, it's not a bad.
I apologize.
conversation.
Won't happen again.
No, I would personally
I
love
apologize.
to ask questions.
Prefer, there's preference, there's no rule that says you can't. Now, you'll have a hostile, and I don't know if you want to engage them at that point. 'cause
I would like to engage with whether they're hostile or not hostile. Last time, I just wanted to ask a question about the resident that brought up the deer, and I was told I couldn't.
Okay, I agree that we probably shouldn't, so I'll refrain.
So all I need is fair application of the rules.
Whatever you guys want, fair, just consistent.
Fair is consistent. Consistent is non-preferential.
Okay?
So
well,
can we ask questions to residents?
There's a difference between giving a resident information that they asked for versus engaging in a dialogue which allows the residents to create an agenda item on their own just by coming up and speaking at public comments. That, I'm not interested in.
Okay, but you don't know which one it is until the council
Hang
members.
on, can I
let us
just,
speak.
before we get into a back and forth on this, my recommendation would be we follow the previous guidance that was given, which is, I don't know how many more public comments we have tonight. I'm guessing it's not that many. So we'll just refrain from comment to it. It is totally within our responsibility as well as our purview and authority to create operation and policy around how we conduct ourselves within these meetings. If what I'm hearing is that we want to make sure that there is a bright line threshold for how we do it, rather than leaving it to the subjectivity to say, well, I believe this council member is now addressing and providing information compared to something else, that's where we're gonna get into conflict. So if we're passionate about this and saying that, no, we will not allow response in one instance, but in another, I would suggest we go through the process of doing a policy.
That would be a council policy, it's not an
Correct.
administrative policy.
That's right.
There was a policy set. So who's
No, it
just-
wasn't a policy. I sent out an email which echoed a discussion that was had in the legal committee because I'm the only person that can contact all council members at one time without a violation of OMA. It wasn't a policy. That's a council-led discussion, so it'd be a council-led policy. The administrator does not play a role in that.
So, David, how
Yeah.
do you want to handle this? Would you just give us some guidance?
For the time being, when someone wants to speak at public comment, we will take their information, we will get it to the village administrator, and we will deal with, the village administrator will deal with it accordingly.
Agree.
Because I'm not interested in getting into question and answer periods. That's gonna delay our meeting, so if it's,
Like this
if,
did?
if doing something simple means nothing, then I'll opt with nothing. So we won't have any comments. Anyone else have public comments? Please.
Should I introduce myself?
Yes.
Okay, Rebecca Bemis on Wing Lake Road. I just wanted to kind of follow up. Thank you guys for the previous meeting. I don't know what's going on currently, but I do appreciate, I saw David out there. David Goldberg drove out there to check like the stop sign or the area that we were asking for the stop sign. So I just wanted to thank the council and Angelina for spearheading this just to improve safety in the community. And I just wanted to, again, request that like the council takes it seriously, adding stop signs in dangerous intersections and just considering the safety of pedestrians and bikers and children and dogs and everything, and that we can add some within the village limits at this point in time. So again, like the Wing Lake and Suzanne intersection that I was concerned about, it would be wonderful if we could make movement on that and do something about it so that we can have a safe summer. That's really it.
Yep. We're on it, thank you. Anybody else? All right, we'll close public comments. Reports of village officers and agents. Start with Chief Lawson.
Good evening. All of you got our monthly report. Are there any questions? I think last time I was here that you authorized the purchase of a new patrol vehicle. That has been purchased. We should have that in service in the next 2 to 3 weeks. In the meantime, another one of our vehicles just went down today, not damaged, but some engine problems. So we might have to bring back the horses soon, but we're working our way through it, so.
You guys are hard on cars. Sorry, I shouldn't.
It shouldn't be, we're just driving around, but they're not holding up. Are there any questions?
No.
Anybody have any questions for Chief?
Do we still allow our officers to patrol on horseback? Or is that, okay.
But the bikes were out.
So, yeah, we have the electric bikes, and they didn't, the electric bikes kind of replaced the Segways that you saw at the parade route on Labor Day. I was having visions to Mall Cop with those, so we went with the electric bikes, and we've gotten a great response with that. So we've had them out at the different, public gatherings that we've had here. They'll be out at the camp out next weekend, and certainly at the concerts this summer.
Excellent.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
So, while we have you up there, on our agenda today, we are going to also consider the interlocal agreement for the co-response team. So you want to take a second and fill us
Sure.
in on what that is, and we can take action on that?
Yeah, we've talked about this a few times. It was brought up when I first arrived here last year about my thoughts on having a mental health professional being part of the department to help us deal with mental health emergencies, with alcohol and drug abuse. And obviously, when you go at it alone, and we're a small agency, it's cost prohibitive. So we're always looking for partnerships, either with other departments or other the groups out there that can help us out. So we partnered with the West Bloomfield Police Department, who also reached out to Sylvan Lake, Orchard Lake, Keagle Harbor, and they were nice enough to include Franklin and Bingham Farms in a collaborative effort that's going to have a mental health professional available to us 5 days a week. They're also going to be on call. So even though we think we're subject matter experts on a lot of things, there's some things that we are not subject matter experts. And I think, when you're dealing with mental health or certain circumstances, it's nice to have those outside opinions, those professional opinions come in to make sure that we're handling things properly. So I think this is a big win for us as a community.
Is that person going to be on site 5 days a week, or is that where they're available to us in the event they're needed 5 days?
So they're going to be available in one of the 5 communities, 5 days a week, based out of West Bloomfield, but they're going to come ride with our officers. They'll be available on call. If we had a significant issue in the middle of the night, they'll come out for us.
Thank you.
Is it one clinician, or is it a team of clinicians that will allocate it out?
It'll be one full-time person.
One person?
Yes.
And I'm sorry if you mentioned this, I missed it, but what hours is this individual available?
So that's being worked out, but it's probably going to be like 8 to 5, or 8 to 4, 9 to 5, something like that. But they're also available on call. They have a cell phone and things like
Okay,
that.
so they'll be on call as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And what other training are you providing to the officers so that they are good users of this skill?
Okay. So there'll be in-house training, and we've had quite a bit of that this year. We've taught them a lot about autism, mental health, dealing with people that are, in need of outside services, and letting the officers know what other kind of services are out there. So we're going to continue to train on this over and over. It certainly expands the knowledge of the officer, but it also reduces our liability, which is super important.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, one more question.
Sure.
How can residents leverage that? So in an instance where it's a non-emergency, but someone might be struggling with something like that, are they to call into the police department?
Yes.
On a non-emergency line and seek guidance, or is it only if an emergency happens? I just want to.
Nope. So one of the things that this mental health professional will do is be able to provide services outside of that person. So what's maybe Oakland County provides, or Common Ground, or Haven. So there'll be different, there'll be information given to that person. It doesn't have to be like an immediate emergency, but that person will also do follow-up. So if we go out and someone's having maybe a mental health breakdown of some sort, the clinician may come to the scene, but also going to follow up and track that and make sure that they get the proper services that they need.
So the Oakland County Health Network is subsidizing a majority of the cost of the professional's salary and stuff. I mean, clearly what us and the other villages are contributing aren't.
So West Bloomfield's actually paying for about 95%.
Oh, okay, that's where it's coming from. Wow.
And the first year, Oakland County has a grant, so we shouldn't be able to have to pay anything this first year. And then the second year, Franklin pays $2,500 and Bingham Farms pays $2,500. West Bloomfield, 90-some thousand. So it's very nice of them.
Yeah. I really like that idea. I'm really interested and curious about how this will evolve and how it's going to change what you do and the perception of police services in the village.
I'll let you know.
So piggybacking off of this, related, not related, are there opportunities to be identified where the use of the electric bikes, more use of the electric bikes could be appropriate? I'm just thinking like wear and tear on the vehicle, or like sitting, a lot of it is the idle time that breaks down the cars, right, for the low mileage. So yes, I understand that we'll use the bikes for more of the public facing events, like the roundup and things like that, but are there other, not that you need an answer here, I certainly don't expect it, but maybe something to think about, or what are some other considerations of opportunities to use it in the day-to-day?
Sure, I think there's creative ways that we can use the bike. I'm sure if we had a rash of break-ins of different vehicles in a neighborhood at night, and we could put some electric bikes out there, that'd be kind of an innovative way to do some extra patrols. But we want to make sure that we're getting from point A to
For sure,
point B.
as quick as possible.
As quick as possible, and maybe the electric bike isn't the easiest thing to get to Bingham Farms over Telegraph, so.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
All right, so this is the same agreement everybody is signing. Has Peter seen this yet?
I have, I looked at it, it's reasonable, I think it's fair.
Okay. I mean, I read through it. It's pretty straightforward. I'm certainly not gonna play with language in it, so.
You can opt out
Yeah,
anytime.
Looks like an opt-out, 90-day notice. It's only a one-year deal. I'm sure we'll re-up it annually and maybe make it longer term once it's been in place a little longer, but.
I can provide a report after the first year on how many times we've used it, and you can see if it's, the juice is worth the squeeze or not.
Okay. Yeah, $5,000. Not a lot of money for getting a professional. All right, so can I get a motion to approve us entering into the interlocal agreement for the mental health
Motion to
co-response
approve.
team?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Any further discussion? Any questions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you, Chief. Chief Tony. All right, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You've also received our written report from the fire department. Run volumes remain high, the vast majority being EMS runs. other than indicating that we've initiated the annual apparatus maintenance and testing program. I just wanted to reflect a call that we had last week. This was a resident in Franklin, and this person was unable to get to the door, lived by themselves, elderly age. Age really doesn't matter, though, but we were forced to break into the house because of the circumstances surrounding the call. With that said, I'll take the opportunity to reflect that Franklin and Bingham Farms have voluntarily opted into a Knox Box program for residents. The program affords the resident a very secure way of storing their home's key, and to access the box, every police vehicle and every fire apparatus maintains a key. This is not a free program. The resident would have to pay to purchase the box and have someone install the box. But in light of the damage that we caused to their door, justifiably, I would say that they would have been better off having the box in the first place. If anyone has any questions regarding the Knox Box program, they can call the fire department at 248-626-9862 and just ask for me. Be more than happy to provide whatever explanation they're looking for.
You've been very diligent in reminding us of that, and we now have our first resident who
Well,
feels
first
the
one
pain of
this
it.
year, anyway.
First one, well, actually, you're right. First one this year since you last told us, so
So,
thank
pending
you
your
for
questions,
continuing to remind us.
Yeah. Pending your questions, that'll conclude my report.
Anybody got any questions? All right, thanks, Chief.
Okay, thank you.
Do not see Lance here today, so we can move on to our current bills list. We don't give us any major ones. I didn't see if there was any significant charge out of the usual. Anybody have any questions for Dana or Susan or Meg? Winter maintenance, trees, ditches, banner. Okay. Can we get a motion to approve our current bills list?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Pay the bills. Special reports, okay. So first is President's report. I received, or the village received, I think all of us did, a letter from Jeremy Phillips from the Franklin Baseball and Softball League asking that we read his letter since he unfortunately couldn't be here because he has a far more pressing matter, which is a playoff game out on the field for his daughter, so definitely appreciate that. Dear Village Council, village staff, and Franklin community, we wanted to take this time to thank you for all your support this spring season. The Franklin Baseball and Softball is in the process of wrapping up its 70th spring season, and we couldn't have done it without the support of the Village Council, village staff members, and the amazing Franklin community. Franklin Baseball and Softball spring season saw close to 350 kids play baseball and softball in our league, which is an increase of 25% over last spring season. We have rebuilt our foundation one family at a time and are poised to continue to this trend. Our spring season concludes this weekend with our divisional playoffs and will pick up again in August for our fall season. In addition to the increase in enrollment, we held the first night game at the village at the Franklin Field this season as part of our Family Appreciation Weekend. We could not have done this without the quick actions of Megan Schubert and Susan Goldstrom in moving our event permit through the process. It was a great event and kids really enjoyed playing under the lights at the historic FCA fields. Also, thank you to Police Chief Kurt Lawson for the extra police presence. The kids enjoyed seeing the officers on cycles and stopping to chat with everyone. The Franklin Baseball and Softball League will continue to make investments in the community, and ideally with the additional support of the community, partners, and village council, we can improve the ball fields and continue to provide support provide sports opportunities for community for many years to come. Thank you, Jeremy Phillips, Franklin Baseball and Softball COO. And a special thank you to Jeremy and all the board members, and particularly all the families that participate in the Franklin League and helping make it a strong tradition and an excellent baseball and softball league for everyone to participate in. So that was the only thing I had. The only other thing is, we had talked about this 2 meetings ago. We had Meg look into it, and it was, I think she can do it with just renting 3 tables. Are you guys okay if for next meeting and all next month, since we could rent the tables for a month, we set the council up the way we had discussed, let each of the commissions try it out, get a test run on it? Okay.
All right, so we'll get moving on that. We'll rent the tables first, test the layout, make sure it works, and then we'll go ahead and work on purchasing that and
Awesome.
getting it over here permanently.
David, anything?
Nothing from me. Thank you.
Abby?
Nothing for me.
Mr. Ferris?
Just a quick update from Historic District Commission meeting
Thank you.
last week. Pleased to announce that there's some progress moving forward with the Great Dog Cafe project, and some features were approved by the Historic District Commission, and I think we're all looking forward to seeing that business up and running. In particular, I know my 3.5-year-old daughter will be thrilled to know that there will be an ice cream
Ice cream.
window.
Big one. That is a big one.
Oh, I think, the Franklin opens officially tomorrow, so
Yep.
noting.
They had their grand opening this last month, or their sort of their soft opening, and it was
Outstanding.
beautiful, beautiful facility.
Dan, is there a proposed, open date, or have they gotten to that point with the Great Oak?
Well, fingers very much crossed on that.
On what? I'm sorry.
An opening date for Grey Dog. And Lisa said, I think the quote was in her wildest dreams, that it could be Labor Day, but that might be a bit optimistic.
Yeah, it might be.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else?
Nothing else from me, thank you.
Pam?
I have a question, and if you're gonna deal with this later, let me know. We terminated the contract of a communications contractor. I'm seeing a couple of areas pop up where communicating is gonna be really important. And I'm wondering what your thinking is, what progress has been made or decisions made on replacing the work that person has done?
When we terminated that contract, I made it very clear that staff wouldn't have the capacity to manage communications in the same. But by hiring an economic development director, we would make sure that those priorities were then passed on. So once that position is filled, I anticipate that really becoming a part of the focus of that new
Okay.
position.
Thank you.
Pam, what were the big announcements?
Well, one of them that reminded me to bring this up was the comment that the chief made tonight about the additional service that will
Yeah,
be
the communications person.
by the police department. I didn't ask what the plans were to make this known to the village, but it was on my mind. That's why I brought it up. The other thing is, I've been turned out that I've gotten some comments from people about our village newsletter. Had a chance to ask Dana about the numbers of email addresses that are that the newsletter is sent out to, which was significantly smaller than I thought it was. So I'm concerned and a little worried that we've got increasing needs to communicate with our residents, but a solution isn't in sight. And I'm aware of the decision that, you made.
That wasn't my decision, that was the
Well,
council's
sorry,
decision.
it was, and I don't want to regret letting her go. I'm sort of feeling that right now, but I'm looking for, how are we going to fill that gap?
Okay.
Of course.
But I don't know if we're still raising hands.
But, I was just gonna go down the list. Are you done with your?
I'm done.
Or you wanna comment on that? Or do you-
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Was the social media coordinator helping with the newsletter?
No.
Okay.
Do you have any more?
I don't.
Okay. Angelina?
Can we take a vote on the village youth council that trustee Sally proposed like 3 or 4 months ago?
Take a vote
Not-
on it to do what?
To initiate momentum. Like start, do we have to do that?
I'm not seeking a,
No.
oh no, I'm not seeking a vote at this council.
Okay.
I would want to prep for that.
I mean, I think we're all on board for it. I think we were waiting.
No,
for
for
you.
sure,
I didn't
for
know
sure.
We had to
Yeah,
vote
no.
on it. Okay.
I mean, I guess at any time that you're ready to bring a general, if you, when you, whether it's just an outline of what the theme is, so that-
Yeah,
so that we
anticipate
could set
more.
something up.
Yeah, so my thought process was this, is that one of the reasons that I want to do it is to get, one, the perspective and engagement of the youth within the village. The second is to make it equally beneficial for the people participating by having that be on their resume / applications for universities. But by the time that we kind of got into the thick of it, application season had already passed. And so I think what I would really like to do is spend planning over the summer so that when we come back into the next school year, we can go to the schools within our, I mean, it'll be open to and prioritized for residents of the village, not just particular schools that they could potentially go to, but that's a good way for us to go out and kind of market it.
Are we gonna get a Main Street update in the administrative report? 'Cause we
No.
didn't get-
This agenda was decided on by the legal committee. It's intentionally kept light because we have a lot of budget discussion. You'll get a Main Street update at the next meeting. A lot of agenda items were bumped until the next meeting, and that decision was made by the legal committee.
Okay. So since we're not getting a Main Street update, the Franklin was, and we didn't have a Main Street meeting last month. The Franklin was interested in getting a letter of support for poppies for historic grants because the infrastructure. It's called Poppies, right? Penelope's. What are they gonna call the new sandwich shop? Polly's. Sorry, my girlfriend's daughter's name is Poppy. Okay. For Polly's, for letter of support for infrastructure of historic buildings. And when they apply for these grants, they need non-monetary commitment from the village, but a support in spirit from the village. So who would that, do we have to take a vote for
I
them
mean,
to
we should
contact?
definitely vote and support, and then you have an idea of how you want to, like,
Well, the thing
let
is-
them know this? You
Well,
want
I was gonna
kind
bring
of
it up.
have
but
Meg
then-
pen a letter based on, or do you?
Well, it would come from council.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So council would just
So
draft a
people-
letter and then you guys would sign.
How soon you want to get it done?
Well, because they asked in May, and I was gonna bring it up, and now if we don't take a vote on it now, we have to wait till July.
No, and I don't necessarily want to make them wait either. The question is, who's going to draft the letter, and are we going to be comfortable? You want
I get,
to, you want
Yeah.
to take on the task of drafting the letter?
yeah, yeah. Should we take a vote to make sure that we have?
Yeah, I'd like to take a vote to make sure that we're all in support of the action.
Okay,
And then for the execution, I'm fine if you want to pen a letter,
okay,
just send it out to everyone, and then no one reply, in a big communication. Just send any comments you would have, to Meg, and then Meg can
okay.
put the final letter together.
Okay, I'll make a motion to support, Polly's applying for historic preservation grants to improve the infrastructure of, the building downtown.
Second.
Second? Any further discussion? Anybody in favor? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, great. Thanks, Angelina.
And then, just a thanks to Jeff Kopelman for giving us the information on the historic, annual meeting. I will look over that. And then everyone that emailed one of us after last meeting regarding streets and sidewalks, all of those locations, like I've been sending to Chief and Meg, so thank you for vocalizing your opinions and sharing your thoughts and getting involved in the political process. That's how we know the issues that are around Franklin. So keep on emailing, keep on submitting public comments. We also got one about the deer and the suggestion to look into sterilization over culling. I did look into those statistics. It seemed like that may be a more long-term solution. And then as far as issue tracking, I know we talked about this like a few meetings ago. You were sending out those like updates in between meetings, and then they kind of stopped, and then we were saying like, how are we gonna know where the issues are and the priority of the issues that you're addressing?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
Like 3 meetings ago, you were gonna look into an issue tracker spreadsheet where you would like prioritize by like high, medium, low, so we would know like what the high priorities were for the village, medium and low, so we could kind of stay.
Based on
abreast.
resident phone calls?
Well, it was issues that the residents were bringing, but also initiatives or projects that you were handling like for us.
Because those seem like two different things. Are you asking what I do every day and how I'm rating
No.
high, medium, and low versus what residents are calling in and complaining about?
No. So there was like regarding the room functionality, or like a list of procurements, or looking into capital investments, just the things that we bring up here. We were saying like, instead of kind of bringing them up every meeting, like you said you were gonna think about a way to like let us know, you know, like where it wasn't your priority, because I was like, okay, now you're doing police negotiations, so obviously that's high priority. Now you're doing budgets, that's high priority. But instead of us kind of bringing them up or reminding each other about them, how do we know like what's being worked on immediately and what we should like wait 90 days to ask or follow up on?
I don't know of a system that would be able to do that. I have not developed one, and I can't really think of one other than outlining what I do on a day-to-day and showing where my priority is for what I'm tackling for day-to-day. I really don't have an issue with council members following up and sending emails on things that they want to talk about.
And I understand that, I think I understand the two issues she's differentiating. The first was more of a council interaction with you so that you didn't feel like you had to respond to things on a daily basis. So is everything still in place where we send you questions?
Yep.
You absorb them all?
Yep.
And then send out one response
Yep.
with the answers for all the questions you got that week? And if you didn't get the questions in to Meg at the beginning of the
Then
week,
nothing
then you
goes
don't, yeah, and then your
Yep.
question doesn't get answered until the next week. And then is the other issue, are you talking about our own internal priorities, which we clearly still have to?
No,
that-
so
You're not
that
dealing
was
with that, okay.
one, and then the other was, I really liked when you sent council those like in-between reports of like, these are what I'm hearing from the residents.
Okay.
Just, I think.
They
that's-
slow down when I'm in budget season, so you have seen a lot of communications and work from me in this budget season. When I'm not focused entirely my time on doing that, then I can go ahead and give other updates when I'm seeing trends or hearing lots of questions. In the meantime, if council emails me questions, I'm happy to respond in like a joint Q&A like we saw with the budget and get those out.
Okay. So, because I'm saying this is the first time I've heard of the geese, so I was just like.
Same.
Okay.
So that's not a
Yeah.
complaint that we've been getting in the office, it's
Okay.
not something I've heard, that was the first time I've heard about it.
Okay, yeah, no, that's helpful.
And the complaint system, that's even a whole nother avenue, which I believe
We're working.
Pam
on.
and Mark,
Yep.
they really have a really good system in place, which I think is already being implemented in
It absolutely
an
is.
experimental phase, and whenever you guys are ready to bring that to us, we would love to.
It'll probably be at our
Yeah.
next meeting, again, we kept
Yeah, no, this-
everything
I
off
know,
of
yeah, no,
this
this
agenda,
meeting,
but
yeah,
we
it's
have a
getting
lot to
close.
share with that,
That'd be great.
definitely.
Can I ask a quick question, talking about the stop signs and that sort of thing? I've gotten a lot of resident questions around the new speed alert on 13 Mile, asking if that was something that we had decided on, which I'm pretty certain it wasn't, but I just wanted to get some color around that sign on 13 Mile indicating the speed at which you're traveling and how that came to be. And I'm assuming it was the Oakland County Road Commission. but-
No.
No?
No, so that came from a discussion with the infrastructure committee that asked if
Okay.
we could put our speed limit sign out there,
Oh,
which
we
does
can.
track
Okay.
speeds over a period of time, so I can provide data to the committee.
Oh,
Yeah, that's ours.
okay.
They rotate it around.
Got it, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Good question. Angelina, anything else?
That's it.
Michael?
I have a really big announcement to make. And the Franklin Show has been honored with a 2025 Media Award, Hometown Media Award. But can we kill the lights, Tony? And I'll talk about the award after we,
Nope, that cut our screen.
oh. All right, turn the lights back on.
Yeah, right.
Oh, why don't we
No, he-
reset?
Start it back up.
Oh, no.
Oh, shit. That's show business, baby.
So the lights.
You had it right, I screwed up.
Engagement today. You know, like I have speaking engagements. He sometimes has barking engagements. So I have his stand-in. You know this guy. He's been on the show before whenever Frank can't be here. But so we're going to proceed on. I have a wonderful guest on the show today, and I am very honored to have a very well-known and established Hollywood producer. And by the way, I don't really know this person all that well, so this is sort of a kind of a meeting that we hadn't necessarily planned, but she's been anxious to get on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest is Amanda Adelson, and Amanda is a producer and a writer and a creator and has been involved in some major movies in Hollywood. And the Bad Grandpa series, Johnny and Spike doing their crazy movies. You've been a part of that for how long now?
15 years almost.
Wow.
Yeah.
So okay. So and I've had some experience with Knoxville, and I don't think he likes me very
where
much.
we're going with this. This is 12 minutes
Well,
long.
but let me explain that, because I was on set when you guys were doing Bad Grandpa. And
A producer
I was,
who wants to come
being
to
a
Franklin
producer
and do a
myself,
documentary about the
I was
Franklin.
giving notes.
So is
And
They'll be spending their
apparently,
time
and by
in
the
the
way,
village of
in
Franklin.
Hollywood jargon, giving
And
notes
they'll
is
be
giving
filming
constructive criticism, suggestions
the village
to the
and me
producer.
and Franklin.
And that's what you do when
And it's
you're
a big
on.
honor.
Okay, that's awesome. That's amazing.
On HBO.
That's wonderful.
I'll send it to you so we can't,
Yeah.
if we can't watch it here. Okay.
All right, thanks, Mike. Anybody else? All right, Stuart. Oh, Meg.
I really don't have a lot for the
Okay.
administrator report. We're
Okay.
keeping things brief so we can move into the budget here.
Stuart, you got any updates?
So I'll be brief as well, because we didn't meet last month, barely had enough for a quorum, and so with the ordinance R3 district that we're working on, we wanted to have more people there. And, but I did have a question, since we're now Agenda D item and is it a short request for planning that you had, or is it something that you're gonna require much more talking? Because I don't think ABC are gonna be short and quick. And I prefer not to write home in dark.
Fine. I mean, I guess, what's the item that you want to deal with?
When we were at the last infrastructure committee, it came up that the Village of Franklin doesn't have a blight ordinance. And we confirmed that with Carl. And so,
Carl?
what's his name?
Don.
Don, sorry, was Carl the former one?
Former.
Okay, I'm like, I know that name came from somewhere. So we would like to take a vote of council to direct planning to draft a blight ordinance, and it's defined in Michigan codified laws. They define blight, but also other municipalities have a blight definition. So that way we can vote to codify a blight ordinance. Because right now they're using, I believe,
You guys are
some garbage or recycling, littering in lieu of, but doesn't actually get the blight. And so,
Can I ask a question? Would this also include, like, for homes that are in the process of being constructed, like there's, fences around the property, would this also include, there's some like waist-high grass in our
Yes,
neighborhood?
that
Is
came up
Is that
too.
also under this definition? Honest question.
So another thing, when homes are being constructed or remodeled or rebuilt, it tends that their property is out of code and neglected. So that's some of the things that we're looking to conquer with this blight ordinance, as well as unsightly homes and property in the village.
Sounds like an HOA kind of discussion, but okay. It's up to you, council. What do you want us to do?
I have a question.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair discussion
I
point.
think you were getting at this, but what is the problem we're trying to solve with this ordinance and this referral?
Unsightly, external upkeep of property.
Is
in
it
homes.
endemic? Is it widespread? Is it a couple of repeat violators that are really annoying, or?
It's not based on repeat, it's just preventive, to make sure that homes in Franklin are kept to.
So we don't really have a problem other than stuff related, incidents related to construction?
So, was there has anybody complained about this? Why don't we start at any use cases that we have?
Yeah.
There's a home in my neighborhood, and I've had some residents ask me, like whether we have any, like compliance issues around how tall the grass can grow before it needs to be cut.
That's not blight though, that's not just.
And there's homes that are repeat on Inkster.
But this would be for homes under construction specifically.
Still, the grass in height that's a completely different ordinance, that's not considered blight.
Okay, that's what I was asking. So that is a different scenario than this.
Yeah, we have an ordinance that deals with fencing around open holes. And we have an ordinance that deals with how tall grass can get in general. I don't think we have anything that codifies how you are obligated to keep your property maintained during the course of construction. I'm sure if you went to Birmingham, it's a
But
booklet
wouldn't that
of
fall?
what you need to do.
Sorry, wouldn't that, and that's part of this, if the blight ordinance is written in a way where property owners cannot leave their homes during construction, during remodeling, or even when it's occupied in a way that is unsightly. Blight leads to, rodents and trash and all of these other issues, and I think that we regulate a lot other more aesthetic things, and I think that this should be regulated because it has to do with like safety and hygiene and all of that.
So let me just clarify, because what's the difference between having like a wildflower garden and having like blight and stuff? Is it separate from that kind of initiative, or like what are we trying to, if you would, it would be helpful to me is if you have some examples
Well, it sounds
of.
like she mentioned
Sure,
there's
I
a
can
codified
send you
ordinance. Yeah.
MCL definition of blight along with
let's do that.
a dozen
Yeah.
other.
And then if council's interested, we're happy to look into it. That's not, as long as you all are okay with that, then.
All right, can we take a vote?
I'd like
The
to hear
procedure is to motion it up, second, and give instructions to
Okay.
planning. We do incorporate the International Property Maintenance Code. So take a look at that.
Okay.
I don't know if it specifically addresses it, but it may dance around the issue as well.
Yeah, I mean, we research things a lot when we go to do right things, so if you have any information we can get up front, will be helpful to us. So if this is something council is interested in us in exploring, we're happy to explore it. We're also willing to do it in phases if it's more of a what's the concern scope within the village, and then we get back to you with a report before we write an ordinance. We can do that as well, things like that. So just let me know what the scope and you're looking for.
I don't know what your guys' workload is right now.
It's pretty light.
So the referral piece is not as much a concern you guys could take, I'm just curious, you mentioned something about a Michigan codified statute that we would so could you get that circulated to all of us so that we at least know, and to the planning commission, so that we understand what we're working off of as the basis of what we're trying to implement? And then if, as a spin-off of that, we want to implement different standards for how your property is maintained when it's in various constructive states, that would seem to be the appropriate place to codify it. David?
Yeah, the other thing too is for ahead of next meeting, and I was gonna tie out with you at our next planning commission, if we could get a list of everything that is currently being considered by the planning commission, whether or not you began it. That way, because one of the things you and I wanted to focus on was making sure that there was alignment between what planning commission is working on with what council wants. So then we can take that list and come up and agree on priority. So if you're in the works on something, continue to be in the works on it. But for the items that have not been started or are fresh, are still relatively fresh, we can gain alignment as a council so that you all can feel confident that you're supported in it.
Okay. Yeah, right now, the only thing that we have on our agenda to work on is the R3 ordinance alignment. So there's nothing additional that we're doing outside of that. So if this is something to investigate, we can add it to our agenda. That's fine, yeah.
Okay, just so everyone, a blighted area is a portion of a municipality developed or undeveloped, improved or unimproved, with business or residential uses marked by a demonstrated pattern of deterioration of physical, economic, or social conditions, characterized by such conditions as functional, economic obsolescence of buildings or the area as a whole, physical deterioration of structures, substandard buildings, or facility conditions. And it goes on. And so it's pretty detailed, but I just typed in Michigan. Yeah. Do you want us to vote on it?
You gotta make, so I need a
Yeah.
motion, if you wanna vote on anything, there's gotta be a motion and a second.
Okay. I
So-
move to direct the planning commission to research, and draft a blight ordinance for the village of Franklin.
Okay.
Support?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I have a point.
Yep.
So generally, I don't like to start building ordinances unless we need to. What I would ask to you to consider is to build a pretty tight case that we need this. I haven't heard it yet. If we had examples, or if you were to feed those to Meg or Stuart, and also let us know what existing ordinances address this kind of problem, that potentially the planning commission might look at a consolidation of multiple ordinances into a single blight ordinances, could be an outcome. I don't know. I'm just not there yet from
So what I'm wondering
ordinance
if,
standpoint.
was it, I don't know which was, but it was actually ended up being Dan or Abby who seconded and Angelina's motion. So your motion included doing like research and checking into it, and then the second part was draft a motion? Draft an ordinance. So would you be comfortable at just directing them to start doing the research piece, investigating that code, investigating where in the village we feel that this would be applicable? If you guys in infrastructure have already identified areas, like get that on a list and get that in our hands before we just have them willy-nilly engaging and drafting an ordinance in the next 30 days, which they probably aren't gonna get done anyways. So in the next 30 days, I'd love to see them begin the process of you getting them the information that they need, Chris Dusen getting the information they need, you guys doing some vetting out, driving around. I'm always driving around, but start paying particular attention to those defined terms that you identified of what blight is, and then consider the drafting as a second piece.
Pam, would it be helpful if we also researched any existing statutes or things that would cover some of the things that I mentioned? So what's in existence today that addresses some of this, before we get to the point of researching and/or drafting
Dusen would be
something new?
helpful in that, and if there are out there, then we should be looking to bring them all
Correct.
together to
Yeah, yeah.
one spot.
Yeah, let's handle it in two stages.
Okay.
And maybe that's what I'm proposing, is
Is it,
Yeah.
just to see what's what? What do we have?
No, I'm not, but we can take a vote. I fully in support of the research, including what she said.
Correct.
Like, I think that's part of researching, right, is to like do analysis, see what we have, see where they can be consolidated, see where the gaps are, like that's
Yep.
legislative ordinance research, so that would all be included.
So
I don't want you guys to like run in circles, like that's what I'm trying to prevent, you know what I mean? And it doesn't have to be 30 days.
No, I don't think, I
Yeah.
don't think he meant that
Yeah.
in any seriousness.
But I think like due diligence research includes however your methodology is. I don't want to prescribe it, but
Okay.
I would be in support of including what Pam and trustee Hanson, trustee Pam. Trustee Hanson, trustee Gates said.
We know who you're talking about.
Maybe I should offer an amendment or offer an amended motion. Would that be, or you would?
Yeah, but I'm just worried about like telling them how to do their research.
Well,
That's not what they're, I
Okay.
don't think that's what I understood
Hang on,
that,
this is-
understood that to be.
This is just what I want to understand. This is my contribution to this conversation, which is, are we taking a vote to send them to work on a blight ordinance? Because what was read as the definition of blight was a very, very broad definition that could then turn into a lot of different directions that I don't think we're actually offering you much service in the way of. Right, like I do think to a degree, like what are we asking for them to come back with? Because it's not to start the drafting process. So for me, if we take, unless there's time sensitivity, in which I want to respect that, it's more valuable to say, here are use cases specifically within the village. Here is what we as the policy body are trying to correct for. Now go forward and draft and look at there's many different municipalities that have blight ordinances within the state of Michigan that range from urban areas to rural areas, right? So we have a range that we can work off of, but I think the direction of what we're trying to accomplish from a policy perspective is the greatest pathway forward for actually efficiency of the planning commission.
Yeah. So my, after listening to everyone's comments, the thoughts that come to my mind that be efficiency would be looking to see where our ordinances are deficient in being able to manage blight, and then report back what we see as deficiencies to meet the needs the goal we're trying to achieve, and then say we would like to consider building an ordinance around these deficiencies. And
A draft, like, not a draft ordinance to vote on, but like a draft of like, this is the
Bullet
scope.
points.
Yes.
Yeah, like the scope of the ordinance.
That would
And-
work for me.
Okay.
and I like that method
You
because
can use that, the codified state statute as a
Right.
basis.
Don't want you guys to have to like drive
But-
around.
So here's, well, I'm okay with that part, actually, the driving around part. I've done, yeah, anytime I can get on my electric skateboard and ride around, sure, I'll go for it. What's helpful to me in this, doing it this way is that once we have a better idea of what we're going to be proposing or discussing, the public can get engaged without confusion, because what ends up happening is someone's gonna take our meeting that we just discussed, and they're gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna start reporting my neighbors for this, that, and the other, and then everyone's gonna say, wait, we're just creating this like state of reporting on each other for things, and it's like, that wasn't what your intention was. Your intention was to figure out where we're having problems in our village, where we're not meeting the needs of, or expectations of a sanitary neighborhood, or things that could cause problems, and it will get blown out. And so having us scope the problem, discuss where we're deficient, and then then we can bring it back to council, and then you can say, yes, let's go ahead and form an ordinance about the fill-in deficiencies.
Can I withdraw my motion?
I think that's easier.
Oh,
Or
not
withdraw
to
it,
withdraw.
or-
Okay, I'll withdraw my motion. I'd like to make a motion for the planning commission to do well-rounded research on a blight ordinance and propose a scope of an ordinance that fills the gaps, and included in that research the deficiencies in the other ordinances that we currently have
I like
that
I
address
like that,
blight.
too. Love it.
You
Yeah.
okay with that change, Abby?
Yeah, totally, second.
All right. Got an idea?
Yeah,
Use Duzen when possible.
yes.
Angelina and
Yeah, I would love
Or
to,
your skateboard.
infrastructure, or the infrastructure committee members, one at a time.
yeah, good.
Got a question.
Thank you. I apologize for taking a little bit extra
Looks like
time.
there's a consensus, I just want to get.
No, we're gonna vote. No, we're gonna take a vote, so yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so all in favor of the referral, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Great.
Okay.
And then one last thing real quick. So as part of one of our goals is to improve communication within the different organizations within the village. So as part of our R3 discussion, we are talking with the historic district and communicating with them to make sure that they're involved. I went to their meeting last Wednesday, and they're on board with making sure that they stay abreast as to the ordinance as it progresses. So that way, most of our 3 is in the historic, well, I think all of our 3 is actually in the historic district, so they care about it.
Okay, good, thanks for that update.
Thanks, Stuart.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess we can remove that from the agenda.
Yeah, so, we'll get that rid of there, D. All right, so this meeting, and most particularly this month, we have to adopt our 2025-2026 budget. So at this time, I am going to close our regular meeting because we need to have a public hearing to allow residents to address the council on the adoption of the 2025-2026 budget for the village. So I'm going to close our regular meeting at 7:05 and open our public hearing on adoption of the budget for the fiscal year 2025-2026, beginning July 1st, 2025. So if there is anyone in the audience that would like to just speak on your thoughts on the budget in general at this point, I will certainly allow you an opportunity to speak again when we come up to discuss it and consider adoption. But if anybody has anything you want to state to the public as part of the public hearing, this is your time to come up. Okay, so seeing nobody's coming up, we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing on our agenda. Oh, Stuart, please.
So one of the ongoing questions that I think is asked periodically, and I always invested in, is why are we paying for internet at Krieger House when we're literally across the road? Is it because it's a separate entity, or is it not possible to actually
Not possible to
have a
get-
Wi-Fi repeater that goes right into the building?
We've looked at it, it's not possible to get it over there, but that internet's actually reimbursed by grant.
Okay.
So
All right.
we're really not paying for it.
Does that broadcast outside of the building at all?
Yeah, and it's for the whole green.
Okay.
Yeah. And my understanding, so, sorry, just to add a little additional context, because I was the one who always brought it up, that it just ate at me. And so they looked at it, and that's part of the grants we received through the cable board. And I think part of that in their consideration for reimbursement is that we're projecting it onto, so it's for public use.
Good. Thank you for vetting that out as well. Anybody else? Okay, so I will close the public hearing at 7:07.
This is after the public hearing. I got an email from people looking for a budget, and they said the latest one on the website is from 2021, 2022.
We can look at it. This is available online. It's in the agenda packet.
Okay. I don't think they were specifically asking for this one. They were just asking like, where can I see past budgets?
Okay, we'll have to look at it.
Okay, and then when was this budget shared with the public?
Last week on the 3rd? Yeah, it's in the public notice.
On Wednesday?
I don't know what day, the 3rd or the 4th, but whatever the notice says, we noticed it out for the public hearing and made it available at that time. I had copies here available. Anyone could have come by and grabbed one.
Any more questions?
So,
All right, so first item, new business, item A is considering our final budget amendments for last fiscal year, 2024-2025, which expires at the end of this month. So, Meg, you put together a report. You want to
So I prepared a pretty
Explain.
detailed report that shows line by line where some of the transfers are. You also have a copy of the entire budget. In the whole, we spent less than we thought we were going to. We're adding to the fund balance by $120,000 more than expected. So that's even with some line items needing a greater allocation or some needing less. In general, compared to the budget that was passed last year, we underspent by about $120,000 that will return into the general fund balance. I can definitely answer any specific questions that anybody has regarding the amendment.
Nothing regarding the amendment specifically. The only thing within the summary is I want to make sure that that it's properly reflected, because it seemed like we were inconsistent in what we were doing subtractions and additions for. And so I just want to make sure that if this is a public document that's in the record, that we correct it before publish.
Sure.
So like,
What's the summary?
yeah, so looking at a couple of them, so like the capital expenditures plus 90,000, enclosing on projects and underspending an account. Underspending an account assumes that we gained 90,000.
Correct.
Like, we didn't spend it, similar to the 12th officer position not filled, that would assume a
Yep.
plus. But then there were things like, where did I see it? Unbudgeted, go to the front, oh wait, that's, yes, okay, sorry. So if you look at this, it's 90,000 with a plus sign indicating that we underspent there. But when you go to group insurance, it's negative 20,000 for 12th officer position not filled. So like at
Okay.
certain,
Yep,
we
I know
have an
what you're saying.
inconsistency of positive and negatives.
I noticed that too.
Okay, I can fix
So
that.
just go through and make
Yep.
sure that it's consistent for
Yep,
public
and
record.
that's based on like the individual fund analysis, but
Right.
I hear what you're saying, when you
Yeah.
look at it comprehensively,
Yep.
we can easily fix that.
Okay, thank you.
Do we need a motion?
Yes.
I would make a motion to consider the budget amendments for fiscal 24-25.
Second.
Any further discussion, questions for Meg, or anyone else? Stan?
Aye.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Okay, the next item, oops, sorry.
No, well, no,
Not
the next
quickly.
is our millage rates for 25, 26. So this is our Form L 4029, which is included. We do this twice a year as beginning of the season and as we move into our summer bills.
Motion?
Second. There's,
No, go ahead, we can do our motion in a second, then have our discussion.
yeah,
We have a motion from Michael, a
Mike,
second
second.
from David, to adopt the 2025 L 4029 for submission. So, Meg,
Yep,
everything's consistent, the only thing is we brought fire up
correct.
to the full amount.
And added the new library millage that was voted on by the people during this last election.
Oh, excellent,
Right.
yep.
There was some discussion about possibly adjusting the rubbish millage, being that our contract over doubled, but that fund had a healthy balance in it. So for this year, I'd like to just keep the rubbish millage the same and work through the balance that we have, and then that could be a possible topic for getting adjusted next year, but we'll be fine through the end of this fiscal year.
so library was voted on, that's and we adjusted based off the vote of the people, correct?
It's a brand new one,
Yes.
but yes.
But one that was approved by the constituents. The next is fire. So fire, what we're saying is, where would that be?
The fire voted millage of .5023.
Is then gonna, 5023, okay, 5023.
Which is the maximum that's allowed right now. And we were collecting a little bit less than that. We were collecting .3029 previously. This we adjust, you can adjust these without a vote of the people. You just can't exceed what the maximum amount is without going to the people. So we were significantly under collecting historically in this second fire millage, not the charter one, the voted one from 2012. Fire budgets just continue to rise. We need to raise this millage to be able to meet the fire obligations, and even then, we're struggling to meet fire obligations. So, this was the first step that we can take as a council to go ahead and collect the maximum amount that has been previously voted on by the people back in 2012. We had just always opted to collect at a lower rate, but unfortunately, that's not feasible anymore.
Okay, so do we, and we don't have, the chart that we have in front of us doesn't reflect what is paid right now?
No, this is your 4029 this year. This is what gets filed. This is what you're voting on.
Okay, do we have an analysis of like how this impacts the overall taxes of our constituents?
So by raising 0.2 mils, we will collect over here for the fire department an additional $92,000, which is necessary to fund the fire department's budget request.
And what would that break out to per $1,000 is what I think they typically break mills out to.
$2 roughly, we have
Yeah,
roughly 1,000 houses or a little
How
more.
much more a household?
It would be
Roughly
less than
$90.
$90 per household.
Well, sorry, the reason that I don't want to use the term household is because it's based off of the value of the home.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Right.
Right,
So
so-
we're using mils, so it's 0.2 mils.
Right. So typically, like if you go back to the library, the way that they have it broken out is like X dollars per thousand when you do mills analysis, so that you can, so that, again, attorney, not math guy. And so as a result of that, like typically when you go out to the residents, because again, I don't know that residents are, granted, I know we published it, but I don't think they appreciate the fact that we went to them for a tax for the library. Do they appreciate we're now not going to them to increase the taxes related to fire?
Well, they're
And I know that's
different.
within our authority.
They're different taxes. So when this went to the people as a vote in 2012, the people voted to be taxed up to 0.54%. So the people have already voted this millage in, but we never collected that. And it equals out to $1 in property tax per $1,000 of assessed property value, is how you work out mills. So we're talking 0.2 mills per $1,000 of assessed value. So 20 cents per $1,000 of assessed value on your
There you
home.
go, exactly.
So if your home is worth, I don't know, $600,000, we are talking let's see.
And the assessed value is half of that.
Yeah, if your taxable value is 600,000.
it's
which is
300.
an expensive house, closer
I mean,
to-
I don't know, I'm
yeah,
just
so
trying to do
let's
something
use
flat,
use
so.
use 350,000 as the average assessed value. So that's 350 times 20 cents, right?
Mm-hmm. So it's about $70.
Yeah.
Great.
A little less for some, a little more for others.
So the question about like vote of the people voted in the 5.4% or 0.54 mils. We've always collected significantly other. Arguably, that should have been adjusted years ago. We've outgrown, Fire Ask has been needing more funds for a long time. So that's why we have the ability as council, this is not just the ability of council, you would not take this back as a vote, to levy within what is voted on by the people, subject to rollbacks, which brings us to the max that we can ask for, 0.023.
What is, sorry, can we ask a question?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Can we ask it of chief? Or should we talk?
Chief
Sorry,
Donor?
chief, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, what types of expenses have increased? I mean, obviously,
And give us the percentage overall that the budget increased this year.
like, do we have more personnel on staff now, or is I mean, gas, obviously, for the fire trucks, but just give us an idea of other things that the 96,000 would go towards.
In short, yes, everything has increased. Healthcare at 12%. We've increased personnel. We have historically been a volunteer department. However, the volunteers are coming fewer and further between from a greater distance away. So while we have numbers, the issue comes to timing with reference to need. In terms of fuel, we're paying, diesel is running at $4.19.9 per gallon, and we've been working with the Village of Franklin for years now to be able to utilize village accounts to remove the federal gas taxes. We have replaced a rescue with another at $150,000 with an additional $15,000 to $20,000 in preparatory costs with signage, decals, equipment, that sort of thing. In terms of personnel, though, our insurance has gone up, our workers' comp has gone up. We are maintaining training at higher levels. Basic emergency medical technician programs are $1,600 per person. The Fire Academy, we are trying to stave off higher costs by becoming part of a cooperative training group. The North Oakland Training Group is what it's called, which costs us $1,800 a year. And while we are able to offset that with fireworks funding from the state, we are required, because it's a group effort, to supply 40 hours of instruction time from our personnel for each attendee. We had 2 that graduate, I believe, next week. With regard to bringing in training props, things like that, the price of lumber has increased, the price of equipment has increased. Our apparatus is getting older and repair costs are increasing. One of the reasons why we have another rescue that is in need of replacement isn't because it's age alone. It's a 2008 Chevrolet medium-duty commercial cab. The problem is General Motors stopped supplying parts years ago, and finding replacement parts when it breaks is becoming insurmountable.
Do we have full-time firefighters?
We do. There are 7 at
Are
present.
those the only ones that get health care?
Yes. And none of our fire department staff, including myself, have any post-employment obligations. So there's no pension, there's no post-retirement health care. In terms of salaries, I hope they're not watching this, their salary levels are somewhere near the bottom, just under the bottom half of the area salaries that are being paid. In terms of our volunteers, they work on a point system with a maximum annual dispensation of $500. That hasn't changed. So we are trying to contain costs as best as possible, but everything else going on around us is throwing that
Are all
up.
the firefighters EMT, or what's their health training as far as like
Emergency
first
medical
responder?
training?
Yeah.
So we have different categories of staff, of 32 that are on the department in total. I would say probably 22-ish, without having the numbers, are emergency medical technicians.
Okay.
You know what, I'm gonna go down. I'm gonna say 18. We have 2 that are what's referred to as emergency medical responders, which is advanced first aid plussed up. And we have, I believe, 7, including myself, that are paramedics, although we are not a paramedic agency.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I'm satisfied that Chief is doing everything he possibly can to moderate what we all know is a more expensive environment every year. And I appreciate the good work you do.
Unfortunately, we don't have the revenues to address everything that they need at this time, which is something we'll have to address in the future. And I think the biggest change that's taking place within our fire department is that 30 years ago, we were a volunteer fire department that consisted almost entirely of young Franklin men and women that were volunteering, and the number of volunteers has diminished. The crew seems to remain the same, and now all those men and women are 30 years older, and our new volunteers that we're finding, which are obviously the less expensive responders, is having to come from outside of the village, which means travel time is affected, which means response time is affected, which means we now are evolving into a fire department that's gonna slowly not be so volunteer and be more full of salaried employees, and it's those salaries and their health and other obligations that come with it that are, as we find within our police department and everything in business these days, are rising at a rapid rate.
Can I mention one thing?
Of course.
I started in 1991. You're making me feel old.
Right.
We-
And I shorted you a decade as well, so coming up on 35 years of men and women that have been volunteering.
You still have a full head of black hair. It's
Well,
unbelievable.
just not in parts. We, Life Magazine and the Free Press actually published articles in the early 60s, specifically about our fire department, where they reflected on the bank president, the real estate agent, there was an insurance agent, that were all literally running to the fire station to go on calls. Back in those days, dispatch consisted of 5 or 6 residents who had a party line phone set up, and they would take turns as to who would answer the call. The severe weather siren at the cemetery on the hill used to be a call out for the volunteers, so that has gone away 20-ish years ago, and it's been replaced with technology. We take advantage as best as possible with reference to being able to obtain funds from other sources, but in short, as the President alluded to, the costs and the times are changing, and one of those things, not to mention the cost of fire trucks and the amount of time it takes to acquire them, which seems to increase by the day based on tariffs and other things post-COVID. Just my opinion.
Just a quick question, Tony, and you may not have a firm answer on this, but what are your hiring goals for this coming year?
One additional person.
One, okay, and then after that?
Well, the goal, let me back up though. The goal is to maintain 2 people at the station 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Okay.
It affects a safe response. It affects the ability to initiate a fire response.
Yeah.
The key there is to initiate. Having 2 people is certainly not going to put out a fire, but it's going to make a start.
Okay.
So as we work, and as we worked with the villages, both Franklin and Bingham Farms over the recent term, we're trying to work collaboratively towards what the future looks like. At this time, other than bringing on one person and adjusting the budget towards reflections of minimum staffing at the station, I really don't have enough knowledge.
Okay.
Or buy-in's not the right word, but enough voice from our customers and within our fire commission to be able to discuss tonight where we're going 2, 3, 4 years from now.
I know some of the people that are volunteer fire people, and they're nearing the end of their careers, and I wondered if, how that translated into your thinking about staffing.
Well, interestingly enough, approximately 70% of the country is staffed by volunteer firefighters. The problem is the average age of those firefighters is nearing the mid-50s. And so, again, where we look at volunteer opportunities, or those seeking volunteer opportunities, I met with one person last week, young, trained, continuing on with her training, but she lives at 8 Mile and Schoner. So for a medical response, she will never be there in time. And what we've done, and this is something that I didn't start, but this was started before me with Chief Tice, was a program to allow those who would not be suitable for emergency responses because of the timing to make up for that in terms of station duty. So it provides us with reference to someone at the station, so if the call comes in, we have that opportunity. And that is tracked and that is reported out annually in terms of our volunteer hours spent, which last year equated, I want to say, to about 1.3 full-time people. So the average, with the cost of them, that equates to probably less than $20,000 overall in terms of insurance and stipend amounts. And so in lieu of spending a full-time wage for over one person. So the dollars add up. It's just now we're facing post-COVID those additional costs. Turnout gear, which was, we'll say, $2,000 a set, is now approaching $5,000 a set. It has to be replaced every 10 years. So federal grant funding in that area is certainly not present at this time.
David?
Yeah, so this is tied to the budget, but also just a question that relates to operations. For a volunteer firefighter, in order to become a volunteer firefighter, I think you were promoting it at one point, as far as just like, hey, news, just general FYI, there's a cost associated with getting certified as a volunteer firefighter, is that correct? Like a training or something?
So there are several trainings. The state of Michigan does not differentiate between paid and unpaid. The same rules apply to both. So the EMT program, Emergency Medical Technician Program, for a full active volunteer would be EMT, which would be reimbursed, so $1,600. The Fire Academy, which again is we're part of a group effort, that equates to not a direct cost to the academy because that's covered, that has been covered previously under fireworks funding, but it's time that I have to send my folks to help instruct. So 80 hours at this academy, 40 hours per person. There are uniforms, there is insurance, there's work comp, and work comp, although they're unpaid, work comp does allocate $1,000 annual salary for the purpose of creating the policy premium.
Are we reimbursing any expenses to a volunteer for going through that?
They will go through their EMT program, they'll pass the program, pass probation, and then we reimburse them the costs. So they are not going to be paying for the privilege of being here other than their time and their fuel and their personal vehicles to get here.
Okay.
Wait, don't they get a stipend for every call that they answer?
They do. We work on a points program. They earn 2 points. Last year, each point was worth, I think, $1.05. So in short, they get pretty much nothing, and it's capped at $500. What you're thinking is a pay per call
Yes.
program. We do not have that.
Okay.
No. No. We don't, as of right now.
And how old do they have to be, 17 or 18? No,
That's
like,
illegal.
because-
I actually have a discussion with a retired firefighter from Broward County, Florida tomorrow, who wants to volunteer. He's 70 years old.
What about on the other end?
18.
18? Okay.
Yes. Yes. We don't look at age, we look at ability.
Yeah, I wasn't
Yeah.
sure if there was a minimum age for like high school seniors could apply.
We've had in the past, high school students, it's been a number of years. The issue that we get into is we don't do a lot of the things in-house. So there are scheduling conflicts, and then in terms of licensure, they would need to be 18 years old to obtain an EMT license. I haven't checked on the firefighting side of it.
Anyone else, questions for Tony? Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
I have one legal question on this. So our new library millage, .2018, that was what was approved. So we've never collected yet. This is our first collection, and Hadley already takes a bite out of it.
Yeah, it's terrible. We even called to verify, we went through it through, but that's how quickly
You never
Headley.
collect, you never even collect the full amount when you start.
Nope, and that's how quickly things are affected by Headley.
Okay.
It's
All right,
really unfortunate.
Well, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Do we have any further discussion on the?
Yeah, I do have a couple of questions. Did this go to the finance committee? Like, did you all have conversations around this?
Yeah, we talked at length that we would be only raising the fire.
And I guess my question would be, and I guess I don't know how we handle this moving forward, but when did we know that we were gonna be asking for a millage increase?
That's unfolded maybe in the last couple of months. It came when fire brought their original budget. It's a 33% increase, and originally they were asking for an additional $250,000. Over the last 2 months, we've been able to get that budget ask down to something reasonable that we can fund solely through our ability to collect and not through creating a further deficit in the general fund.
Because my personal feeling on this is twofold, which is if we knew we were gonna bring this for action by us, I would have loved to have additional notice beyond just, the first time I heard about this was at the legal committee when it was on the agenda. And the way I operate is that when things come to us for the agenda, my personal feeling, I don't view that as an opportunity for me to exercise a position or personal judgment on the matter, just whether or not it should go on for discussion of this, of the entire council. And so for me, if we are going to be increasing the taxes of our residents, I want to provide as much possible notice to residents so that they can come and speak. And I just find it difficult that, yes, I understand that we did everything under the law, but as far as a matter of providing the courtesy to residents so that they can have a voice in whether or not we increase their taxes, if we knew about this 2 months ago, I would have loved the opportunity for us to have notified residents to weigh in. Because I do feel, and so that's what I feel about the notice standpoint, and then frankly, I have to really defer to the finance committee, and I think that I haven't seen their books. I don't know what their finances are. Realistically, we all have to, anyone who wasn't at the finance committee has to take the fire department at their word. And there's no reason that we don't, but there's due diligence that we have to follow. So, Tony, I believe absolutely everything you're telling me. What I'm telling you is that I haven't seen the actual budget to say, yes, totally understand where this is coming from.
Well, you did give us the budget at the last meeting to look at, and David Goldberg sits on that board, and we have engaged in extensive conversations with the fire department. I mean, David Goldberg, myself, and the representatives from Bingham Farms have met 3-4 times to be discussing
But
this.
we collectively are the ones that pass budgets. We collectively are the ones who have to make the decisions and are accountable to our constituents. And that's why I'm saying, like, I appreciate the hard work that you all have done, but I didn't come out of last month's meeting knowing that, I didn't come out of the presentation last month of the fire budget understanding that we were going to be seeking a millage increase.
We're not seeking a millage increase, so I want to be really careful
We're-
with that terminology.
Okay,
We're
we're
collecting
increasing
the amount
the
that was
taxes.
voted on by the people originally in 2012. We have always elected to under-collect. We're not increasing a millage in that way. This was voted on by the people in 2012. We're now gonna go back and take what we brought to the people in 2012.
I mean, we are increasing, I don't want to get into the semantics, I'll just say we're increasing their taxes.
Yeah.
This is the process that the 4029 has always gone through in Franklin.
Can we table this for next month?
No.
We cannot.
This has to be
It
done
has
now.
to
We're
be
talking,
signed
you,
tonight.
There's nothing to table.
guys, we just discussed it. We're talking at roughly $70 a household for our fire department that is asking for us an amount of money that we can't even come close to providing them with.
But then we discovered they have money in escrow.
Yeah,
They have
again,
money in escrow for things that they have it reserved for, which the escrow serves.
Which is what? Like, that's how I left that meeting. So, and we don't actually have access to their books because we don't have oversight or insight into that.
so
They provide
again,
us with a financial statement.
Once a year.
No.
I don't want what I was saying to be lost, which is again, that when we're increasing the tax of our residents, that we try and solicit the input of them.
You're right. We just had a public hearing to get input on the residents of our budget, and it's an overwhelming amount of people here. So you think if we would have let the people know a month ago that there was a chance that we needed to bump their taxes up $70, that it would have changed what happened and who showed up at today's meeting? Once in a while, we need to just legislate, guys. That's what we were elected to do. We have residents that voted to have us sit up here and make decisions. Every single decision we make does not have to be vetted out to the public to the nth degree. We just need to make decisions for them. That's what we were elected to do.
But I think that's our fiduciary
Stop,
duty.
stop.
It's fine, it is our fiduciary duty, and you can do your fiduciary
Stop
duty
with
how
the
you want.
lawyers.
Research it out yourself. Ask for the proper information when you need to have the proper information.
Nobody comes to these meetings.
All we're trying to do is ask that the residents, or that ask the council to levy the full amount of the reduced amount that we're allowed to levy in order to pay our bills. And we need more money to pay our fire department bills. And the only place we could go to help in that is to maximize the amount that we've been taking. Up until about the middle of 23, 24, the amount of money that we taxed and that we were able to levy at its reduced amount covered the amount of money that the fire department needed. So there really wasn't a reason to have to ask anybody. And in our prior councils, whether it was a good decision or not, made decisions to not tax the full amount, to only cover the amount that was needed, and not stockpile any for a year like this, when the chief finds that he needs 2 new employees, and he now only can hire 1 of them, because we don't have the money to give it to him, and you're now worried about another $70 a residence, so that he can't maybe hire an extra employee. And to me, it doesn't need to come back to another meeting, it just needs to be voted on.
So, again, I am not I never said that it needs to come back for another meeting. If another council member did or another trustee, that's perfectly fine. Again, I don't care if it's $70. What I am asking is that when I went and knocked doors, one of the most common things that I heard was increasing taxes. And so I don't think that it's an unreasonable statement for me to make or a request to make. Certainly not one that I have a voice raised at me over, which is providing that if we know that we need to increase taxes or we intend to increase taxes for the residents, that we provide notice ahead of time. And again, I think that the sufficient notice was last Monday or Tuesday, whenever this was posted? I don't. That's my personal feeling.
Okay. We
have a motion.
We have a motion and a second. Can we
All in
vote?
favor to adopt the
Aye.
L 4029? We'll do a roll call.
Trustee Ferris,
Yes.
trustee Gates,
Yes.
trustee Hanson,
Yes.
trustee Solly,
Yes.
trustee Salsa,
Yes.
trustee Salako. Yes. President Goldberg.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
All right, go ahead and pull up my budget presentation.
All right, so the last and
Get it back to the beginning.
more pressing item is gonna be our
Make it big.
25-26 adoption of the budget.
I prepared a really brief summary for us here to help educate a little bit more on the budget. And Dana, I'll just instruct you to switch slides. So obviously the next slide here. So to give a brief overview, when you're looking at our budget, we operate by fund accounting. That's how local governments are set to budget, and those are the standards. We have the general fund, local and major streets, police, wastewater, garbage and rubbish, building department, general debt, road millage debt, and sewer fund. Everything really other than our general fund and our police fund are special funds that collect different revenue sources on the 4029 that we just saw. They'll have relatively restricted spending and expenses and revenue. So tonight we won't go into much of the details of those unless you have a specific question. We're going to focus on the funds where we actually do have discretionary spending, and that's our general fund and in our police budget. The first thing that I think is important is while we are running a deficit, we've been running a deficit. We've been running a deficit pretty consistently since 2018, meaning that each year the expenses that we have allocated are exceeding the revenues that are coming in. The only reason that you see some relief, next slide, sorry, Dana. As a result, the fund balance, which when we say fund balance, we're looking at the general fund, how much of this discretionary money is left over at the end of the year, continues to dwindle down. So you see that the budget in 22 and 23, it had a lower ending fund balance, and then you get to 23, 24, and you see that it increased. The reason that that increased was from the Headley rollback that was voted in by the people in 22. If you went back to the previous slide, you would also see that the deficit that year was lower, and that, again, was because of this Headley rollback. So while we went to the people and we restored our original millage rate, it was really a temporary effort to alleviate long-term budget pressures. It was never going to cover long-term structural deficits and growing service demands, which is what we see in this budget. To note, fund balance for this current fiscal year that we're tying out, we are increasing that fund balance by an additional $120,000. And that was, I'm sorry, there's a typo on here. That increase was by the village's fund balance as a result of prudent and frugal spending by staff and administration. We were consistently prioritizing cost-effective operations. We avoided unnecessary expenditures. We explored creative revenue strategies, and we sought out efficiencies across departments for the last year, and that has allowed us to bring you the budget amendment tonight. And instead of asking for more money that would increase a deficit, we were actually able to add back an $120,000. Go ahead. To talk to you a little bit about where we get our revenue sources. About 75% of the money that comes in is going to be from property taxes. 15% is from state revenue sharing. That number is allocated by the state. It's based on a number of factors, and it remains pretty consistent, though really doesn't move the needle very far. We do make some revenue on fees and miscellaneous permits. The admin charges for Act 51, we're allowed to charge back to Act 51 the administration of administrating our roads and streets. So we do get a 2% of our revenue comes back from that. Typically, we average about 2% in grants, and we get other reimbursements. You know, they're tiny. They're Krieger House rental, dividends, miscellaneous incomes, maybe something that's not necessarily a grant but an allocation. Makes up about 1% of our revenue each year. I think this is a really important slide, and it talks about the 4029. So here's a demonstration of every tax dollar you spent. Of every tax dollar you spend, only 36 cents of that comes over to operate your government. 26.19% or 26 cents of that dollar goes on a road bond that was previously put into place, so paying off that debt. About 14.5 cents goes directly to the fire department, and that's including our increase that we just voted on, 4029. About 10.5 cents per every dollar goes to your garbage and rubbish. Just under 8.5 cents is going to the library, and then you have a little tiny sliver here that does go directly to police operations, but it doesn't cover the budget at all. So that's just a small allocation. But if you want to go to the next slide, Dana, what's important to note that of the 36 cents per every dollar that's coming over here to the village, 58% of it goes directly to the police department. When we're talking about where is this other money spent, administration and the village clerk, so all the staffing here and all of the supplies and the functions that we're able to provide is only 19% of 36 cents of every tax dollar. So very restricted, very low funding in these other areas. And this is how your general fund is broken out. Yeah.
Yeah, just real quick. Awesome. Thank you, by the way, because this is something that we've gotten a lot of feedback previously, not even when I was sitting, predates me, was the breakdown of, well, we just don't understand where the costs are. I think what would be even additionally compelling to this is, of that 37 cents, if you remove the 58, here's how many, the actual cents that go to the operations of this side of the house.
That's such a good point. Honestly, out of curiosity, let's look. It's going to be real low, right?
Yeah, not a math guy.
Like
Yeah.
$500,000 or so, isn't it?
It's going to be like,
42% of 37
yeah.
cents.
I mean, it's just,
It's just over 15 cents
yeah.
per tax dollar. Goes to provide all the services that this village is offered. It goes, I think it's often lost just because we do a good job at providing services with really 3 full-time employees. But what we're able to do on such a small portion of your tax dollar and the services that we are able to provide over here. So this isn't uncommon, and I would say, you'll see some governments, 90% of their general fund is going to the police. So that's a result of just rising costs in public service and not adjusting revenue at the times. And it illustrates a problem not only in Franklin that's not sustainable, but really across the board. I've seen it over 90%. So we run a pretty lean budget, and when we're making cuts, or like I did in this budget, I cut over $338,000 worth of spending in the budget that you have. Now, other areas had to increase, and our police budget increased. So the net isn't exactly that. But when I'm looking through this to see where we can save money to improve our fiscal strength and health, I'm really talking about the 17 cents per tax dollar that comes over here. That's where that focus is. Any other questions on this one? Okay. I'm gonna break it down, really, we're gonna talk a little bit about police, about how that budget changed and where those trends were. This is the same, presentation that I went over to Bingham Farms and gave with Chief, months ago, a month and a half ago. And then we're gonna talk about the general fund. Now, like I said, there's streets, there's wastewater, and water, rubbish. Those funds have such little activity, they're very restricted. I'm absolutely happy to answer questions, but I don't think they're pertinent to like these type of strategic budget discussions. So let's talk about the police fund, about what we're seeing over there. So this year, the entire police budget is about $2.6 million. It's a 3.4% increase from last year. I mean, and when we're talking like the fire increase was 33%. That was the first increase we got. So the 3.4% is pretty modest for what we needed to get done. Again, 58% of the money in our general fund goes directly to the police department to fund them. Right now, the funding sources are 58% out of our general fund, and half of the police budget is funded by the Bingham Farms general fund. There's also a portion that comes from the Special Assessment District, which is basically the commercial district right across Telegraph, and that's collected by Bingham Farms and passed over to the fire department. If you remember my image of the dollar, and I said a very small portion goes over to the police, that's equals about $172,000. So out of $2.6 million, the public safety, the police millage you see on your 4029 really is not moving any needle. Now this budget may look like a lot, but I think it's really important right now to highlight there's a lot of obligated spending for retirements and retirement health care. Pension funding liabilities and retirement health care make up about $600,000 of this police budget. Next slide, Dana. Okay, so what I did for you, this pie chart is just the police expenses, okay? So we're gonna see personnel, retiree health care, equipment and supplies, training and travel, contracted services, building and property, fleet and fleet maintenance, legal, dispatch and prisoner board, communications, and then some other. It's a really text-heavy slide, so I'm not going to read it line by line, but the important thing to note that of the $2.6 million we see going to the police department, they're using $1.6 million just to fund personnel. Personnel takes up a huge chunk of their budget. The next largest chunk of that budget is going to be in retiree healthcare, those pension obligations that we have. Now, we did write for a grant, not last year, the year before, to bring up the funding to about just under 60%. We were successful in receiving that grant, but we still have unfunded liability hanging out there and thus need to keep up on these payments here. Other expenses that are notable, the fleet costs us about $130,000 a year, but we are choosing to retain one of the vehicles that we had and not sell it. And that was intentional to grow our fleet. As we heard tonight, we had another one out of commission, so it's important that we have a backup vehicle there. Building and property maintenance is at $109,000. Contracted services at $72,000. Legal, dispatch, prisoner board services, these are all outside contracted services that are specialized. That equals about $69,000. Training and travel is about $32,000, but it's important to note that we do receive state grants to help subsidize some of that training and travel. So while that seems high, we do prioritize having a highly trained police department, and we do seek definite subsidies from the state of Michigan to help fund that and with our community partners. Equipment and supplies, including like ammo, bulletproof vests, tasers, those type of things we're gonna see at about $32,000, and there is a communication cost of about $11,000. So when we're talking just the police budget, not the general fund, we're making big transfers from the general fund over for the police department, but these are the expenses. I'm gonna go through the next two slides. So I have just a couple 3-year trends that were notable that I thought were just nice data points. The rest didn't prove to be significant anything significant there. So the first one we'll see is personnel costs are rising. This is not a Franklin problem. This is a problem across all boards. It is now becoming so much more to go ahead and attract, and even more than that, retain qualified police officers. Now, our budget increased a lot here Part of that was due to taking those part-time positions we had and making full-time positions, and we saw that influx in this current budget, and that's why you saw such a great big jump between 23 and 24. We're really pretty stable for having a contract that was opened this year. We made very modest negotiations with our police department. They were successful negotiations, and that's where you're able to see this 3-year trend kind of start to even out. We would expect this to stay about here for the life of the contract, which is another 2 years. And so that cost should remain pretty consistent. Yes.
Do we have any data predating 2023, 24? I mean, because this looks astronomical, but in this grander scheme of things over the last, let's say, 10 years, how does it look?
I'm not sure. I don't have that data on hand. But I can say that it's been a pretty steady increase. I think one of the greatest, also you have to look at this chart could be a little misleading. Let's look at it in millions too. We're talking a $200,000 increase, and I'm not saying that that isn't substantial, but that's what it was between 23 and 24. I would say that your trends are going to be tracking upward, and every time a contract opens, you'll have the same proportionate increase. But I know I'm not going to ignore the fact that costs are continuing to rise more and more now, and this is going to be a trend. This is going to continue to cause a huge drain on our general fund and is a great contributor to the reason why we run a consistent deficit. Next slide, please. Equipment and supplies. So this is an interesting variable because it just depends on the year. It depends on what needs to be replaced. It depends on what's in circulation for the year and what's going on. So between 23 and 24, there was a modest increase of about 5.4%, and this year we were able to bring it down by like 35%. The decrease is the result of a lot of one-time equipment purchases that had happened in previous years and strategic operations, strategic budgeting. Is it really the right year to go ahead and ask for this purchase? Would it be better suited in the next year? So overall, the 3-year equipment and supplies shows, I would say, pretty much balancing, meeting these immediate needs with these one-time purchases and like balancing for broader strategic fiscal priorities. Next slide, please. The building and property is interesting here, and as you can see, it increased in 24-25, and then we're going to see a slight decrease. So in 24-25, it increased by $100,000. It was a 15.8% rise. That, if we'll remember, was from the generator and the HVAC system. These capital improvements that needed to be made, that were necessary, these upgrades, these systems were at their end of life. They had to be taken care of, but that's how quickly it can throw off a budget for building and property. Now, we're expecting a slight decrease, about a 4.4% reduction, and it will return us back to more of a typical spending. When we get a capital improvement plan that's really dialed in, that's where this data will come into play, because we'll be able to make 5, 6, 7 years down the road and start really planning for when these capital purchases are. Emergencies will always happen. The HVAC would have still gone out, and it might not have been the year on the capital improvement, but it will allow us to have better control and be strategically planning for those instead of seeing the, like dramatic spikes and decreases. But as I say that, of course, it's important to remember that emergencies do arise. Okay, next slide. Next, we're going to talk about the general fund, and I don't have any of those same trends because it's just not the same budget at all. So we're going to go ahead and talk about in our general fund where some allocation changes were, and then I'm going to go ahead and open up for discussion and questions from the council. Next slide, please. So instead of 3-year trends in general fund, like we just saw over there, one of the big things we're looking at and we're talking a lot about is salaries, and that's what we're going to see on this chart to the right. So I did highlight some of the areas where like personnel costs are rising, and that is definitely affecting our budget. The chart that you're going to see is the yellow bar is gross pay, taking us back to 2022. Council, when I circulated some of the budget materials, this is the spreadsheet that I showed you. This is just a visual graphic of that. So this is consistent information that you would have already seen. As we can see, budget gross pay increases and decreases, and that depends on how many people you have on staff. which I think is really interesting, is yes, 2026 in this budget does have the highest breakdown for personnel costs, but it is significantly, comparable to what we saw in 22. And that is because in 2022, we had a building clerk, we had an assistant building clerk, we had an economic development director, myself, we had an assistant director. We were just more fully staffed. And so when you see, and then it went down, why did it go down? Well, we never got back up to that staffing again. Now in the new budget, we would hope to get back up there.
So is 2022, the number of employees we have, the same as 2026?
Yes.
Okay, so,
Personnel costs are more expensive.
okay.
But I can give you
Yeah, no,
the breakdown of what that is. So in 2022, the total personnel cost was $445,000. In 2026, it's $50,000 more, $496,000. Now, keep in mind that that includes increases in payroll taxes, which are up by 34%. Group in life insurance is up by 12%. So that's not just in salaries, those numbers that I read, that 50,000. But you're looking at 22 and 26, the difference is $50,000. Yes, some of the staff salaries are higher, but also other costs associated with that are as
So
well.
that's 5 salaried employees in 2022 and 5 salaried employees in 2026?
Yes. Okay.
So we really had a number, we had at least one unfilled position in 24 is really what you're saying.
24, 25,
25,
23, and it's like, I can't just point to one because they'd come in the middle of the year, leave in the half of the year. Obviously, it's not always apples to apples. Some employees make more, like our old building clerk Doreen Martin came with a lot of experience. She made a substantial salary over there and had an assistant. So there are different, there isn't a good way that I found to organize it line by line. I did provide the summary to council, and this is just a visual aid of the summary. Go ahead. Additional cost drivers that are outside of personnel. IT licensing is up. It is costing us more for Office 365, for BSNA, for software, the BSNA software. For IT support has remained kind of pretty steady, but what hasn't remained steady is our payroll processing software, our website hosting software. All of these things saw increases, and you would have noticed those in your budget amendment. Because I had to make adjustments because halfway through the year, our website hosting is going up and it revised and different things were going up. So those are adjustments there. I also want to note that training and conferences hasn't increased because in my contract, unlike in Rogers, I'm allowed a $2,000 stipend to attend city manager conferences. So you will see an increase there, and I'm the predominant cause of that.
Is any other employee required to take training or go to conferences besides you?
No, no one is required to. Go ahead. So like I said, I cut over
Okay, but what about the clerk?
It's not required.
It's not required?
It's highly recommended. It would be very frowned upon to not have there. All clerks go to it. It is a biannual training.
Yeah, I
but
would have thought so, okay.
it's not like it's required to keep a status. I wouldn't recommend it, but it's a serious training. It talks a lot about changes in legislation and changes in clerking, but it wouldn't diminish Dana's title as a clerk.
Okay, thank you.
So I cut about $338,000 of spending from this budget. Here are some of the things that were noted in that. I cut a lot of engineering for projects that weren't identified as priorities. Keep in mind that there is a capital improvement line here in this budget. It is meant to help assist us when we have an emergency like an HVAC situation, and could also be used to support a council initiative or project should it arise and we get consensus on it. So it's not like there isn't any money to do anything. It's just that we're running a deficit budget. We do not need, it's not strategic for us to be putting engineering dollars in areas that have not been agreed upon by council. Public information, that's down because we got rid of that consultant, but you saw an increase in personnel costs because we're going to hire a full-time economic development director, so they will pick up those responsibilities. The council miscellaneous expenses is down is because we had some different studies that were through on the council that are not continued. They were one time and were completed. Krieger and Broughton House repairs are down. It's twofold. One, we completed some Krieger House repairs that didn't need to be put back in this budget. Two, I cut almost every non-essential repair to this building. It's not the year for us to be doing that, even though there are definitely a laundry list of wish and asks that we have working in a 200-year-old building. We're gonna wait on that. Zoning Board of Appeals had a study last year, so that didn't need to be funded, as did the Historic District Commission. Audit expenses and consulting services have cut. I've cut over $25,000 in that just by me personally picking up those responsibilities from your previous administrator. Public information consultant expenses, we talked about that, has gone down. I think one of the most interesting points in my cuts is that I found over $60,000 in expenses that had continually been charged through our general fund, but really where they needed to be were in the building department fund. So we talked about restricted funding. The building department funds itself through permits, through plan reviews, through all of their functions. We're not allowed to take in that money as revenue and move it over into our general fund. It has to stay in the building department. Coincidentally, you are also not allowed by the state to over collect in that fund. So if you get a huge fund balance in there and it's noticed by the state, they'll come and say, why are you overcharging for building services? You're clearly bringing in more than you need to run your building department. You need to cut that down. So I look at our budget this year and we have a $700,000 balance in our building department. And that seems really shocking to me because I know that comparatively the expenses that are being charged, for example, our permit fees, are reasonable and they are in line and in fact haven't been adjusted in years. So why is all this money sitting over here? It's because previous administrations and budgeting practices had not been charging the expenses to run the building department to the building department. What that means is that I went through and looked at our internet and our water bill and our all of our utilities and our personnel, including some of my time. I spent about 20% of my time working in the building department and made appropriate allocations for that. And that freed up an additional $60,000 from our general fund that just shouldn't have ever really been charged there, in my opinion, should be over into the building department fund. So what does that say about the building department fund? We will continue to budget in this way. I stand by the fact that our building department charges very reasonable, comparable rates, and if anything, they're pretty low. They haven't been adjusted in years, but I'm not suggesting that. We will continually eat down at that fund balance over there and get something that's a healthier fund balance, which I would consider in that account to be more like $350,000. But it is important for us, staff, and for you as legislators, as when things come up that we are appropriately saying, whoa, is that where it should be? It should be in the building department. And that's my job as an administrator, but you can always check that. So another important thing when we're talking about staff salaries is code enforcement and our building inspector are over in the building department fund. A portion of Susan's salary as the assistant administrator is charged to the building department fund, and that's because she's working in the building department. We are answering phone calls, issuing permits, working with developers. A portion of my salary will now be allocated over there. So yes, we saw personnel costs increase, definitely, but we definitely added more that was over into the building department. Next. So in summary, this is, we're calling it an education year on the budget. It's not a fun year for a bunch of, bells and whistles and fun projects, but there is wiggle room in there for when we do have a project that we need to make movement on, say a pathway or something to that effect. It's in that capital improvement line. It's probably the first time that this budget has been looked at with a fine-tooth comb by an administrator in over 5 years. Possibly.
I would say since Amy Sullivan was here, that would be about 15 years ago, honestly.
It's been a long time. It was a lot of tedious work. To give you an idea, typically the administrator was not playing an active role in this, and Plant Moran and our staff were working to develop it. And honestly, I think they did a great job. It is an administrator's job to do this. I have the knowledge and the strategic vision and the communication over here. So I think that our staff did a great job doing what they could, but only with the knowledge that they had. And it used to cost us a lot more to prepare a budget because Plant Moran was doing it and not me. So was it a huge time consuming project? Absolutely. Since April, this is pretty much all that I've been doing, looking at, strategizing, thinking about, moving around, asking questions about. But I think that what I'm presenting to you tonight is a budget that I have been prudent in, that I have found cut costs in, that I am trying to build a foundation to where we can get our strategic priorities funded. And this is a cycle. It repeats every year. So we'll start this again and hopefully we'll get into a better groove of it. So that's my budget presentation. It's brief on purpose. Now let's go ahead and open up.
Can I just say that in nearly 20 years of sitting in this room, that was the most comprehensive, professional, spectacular, and complete budget presentation we've ever had.
Thank you.
Congratulations to you.
And thank you for that.
That was spectacular.
Thank you.
And I would like to just quickly address the fees structure, because I've been talking about this for a long time. Somebody recently told me they rented the Krieger House for a day and spent $200. And I just don't even understand why we would charge so little as $200. It's got to cost that much to clean it. And so we have estate sales in this village, and when people come in to get that permit fee, $1, and I told you to charge them $1,000, and they would have paid at least $500, because we know other parts of the metropolitan area pay upwards of $500 for a fee. To have any fee that's $1 is ridiculous for us, to even write anything up for $1. So I think we really need to look at that. I know the lump sum total isn't going to make a huge difference, but we're living in the 1840s here with our.
Particularly fees that our residents aren't paying.
Yeah.
Say it again?
Either way,
I said particularly fees that our residents aren't necessarily per se paying.
Correct.
What I've heard from council in regards to fees is that they need to be looked at, and we're gonna put them into one unified fee schedule that we approve each year annually with council. So we're making adjustments as adjustments are fit, because how long has a garage sale permit been $1? I've never paid $1
Well,
for
not
anything.
garage, we don't have garage sales. These are estate sales.
We do have a garage sale permit? Oh, okay, we have yard sale
Oh,
permits
okay,
that are $1.
I'm not aware of that, but that's
same
ridiculous.
with estate sales. So that is definitely, there are other.
Now, just wait till I have mine, though, before we institute this new fee.
Oh, sure, yeah. So.
No, you won't.
The budget process doesn't end on the night that we adopt the budget. The next thing that is, we have a number of contracts that need to go out to bid. Contracts that haven't seen the light of day, some in 40 years. It's a very time consuming to kind of get that out and get them out to bid, but that's the next project that I think that we need to start working on is, are we really entered into contracted services that are providing us the value and their worth? Now, there are some that I would argue 100%. For example, McKenna and our planning contract is a wonderful contract. We get a heck of a good deal, and we'll put it out for bid, and they will prove that to us. But there are other contracts that we have, say like our cleaning services with Sunset. I'm under the impression it's been over 30 years since someone has looked at that contract. So moving past getting the budget approved, hopefully that can happen this evening. The next project is to start pulling all the contracts and getting stuff out to bid, so that by the time we start the planning process for next year, which honestly, if I had been here for an entire calendar year, would have started in November, that we have a good idea where contracts are. I think another project there is a fee schedule, looking at fees, looking at how those are laid out in ordinances, pulling specific fee numbers out of ordinances and putting them into a schedule that we can review and approve annually. That's another really important point. So tonight, we're not solving all the problems. There's still a lot of strategic movement here. There's a lot that we still need to do and continue throughout the year, but let's talk through the proposed budget. I'm happy to answer questions and see what we can do to get this adopted.
All right, so,
Do we want to make a motion to approve?
well, hold on a sec. I want to start with Meg on how she wants to go through this. And all of that hard work in reducing a lot of excess costs. And I agree that that's a starting point, but I'd like to think of the budget as the worst-case scenario. And that throughout the course of the year, we're always looking to spend less. The budget is what the maximum amount we would need to spend. I would hope that throughout the year, we have budget amendments that go the other direction. Obviously, things come up, but at the end of the year, like we did this year, it's, you know, I'd like to see that that same analysis be going on year-round in what we're spending. And you're, you know, as you now will operate through a full cycle of the village, you'll be in a better position for even next year when the budget comes to see where savings can be found.
Absolutely. I anticipate, you know, to your point, you make a budget and you hope to operate within that budget. Emergencies come up, those require amendments, but at the end of the year, to have spent everything that you put in the budget, I think that would be very unlikely. They're there as a cushion so that we are able to operate, but I would anticipate, just like we saw this year, that next year we are underspent on the budget as a whole. That's what we'd like to see. We make strategic decisions throughout the year. And that could be something, so, you know, somebody bringing me something, oh, you know, I really think we should repair this or do that. And I say, no, not this budget. Next budget, we'll write it into the next budget, which staff probably got sick of hearing me say that this year. There was a lot that I waited to put into this budget. So we look to adopt a budget, but we are always looking, especially running in a deficit, to be prudent with spending that is over here.
Okay.
I think that probably the best way, in my opinion, for this would be to put a motion and a second to adopt the budget and then open it up for council questions. And but let's pause on that. If a council member suggested a change, it would, and if it is to be adopted, it would need its own resolution. So maybe, is it possible to open discussion without a resolution? Because I don't want to have one hanging out and then make a bunch of little ones in between.
However they want to approach it. You've got the budget prepared, put a resolution, maybe amending it is more appropriate, so.
Okay.
I would motion to approve the budget as prepared.
I will second that.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. So now let's discuss the budget. If
Yep.
anyone has direct, specific questions for Meg, let's start with that, with any specific line item in the budget. If you want to start there
Yep.
versus, you know, general.
Yeah, can I ask just with regard to the presentation?
Yep.
Yeah,
Even
start
just-
wherever you want to start. So start with you, David.
Okay, so with there's a lot of salaries that are moving over into well, let's, I guess, back up further. What is the deficit out of the overall, what's the overall deficit? What's the deficit coming out of the general fund for this year?
So the general fund deficit is, let me pull up my
Yeah.
presentation.
Take your time.
So the overall deficit this year is $425,000.
Okay.
The largest deficit that you've ever seen in one year was in 22-23, and that was $541,000.
Okay, and is that, how much of that is going to reduce the general fund?
That we would consider all general.
Okay, and the reason that I was asking that distinction is because you're shifting some of the salaries from
Yes.
general fund to the building, which operates separately.
Yes.
So is the building fund operating in a projected deficit this year?
Absolutely not. So the building fund before even starting was $700,000 balance, and I would think that the building fund, I can tell you, is projected to have an ending balance of so by the end of the year, when we're projecting revenue for the building fund, we would be over $1 million. We're projecting the building fund to be down to about $999,000.
So
So $138,000 in spending.
138 is what their surplus is for the, okay. Thank you. The next question based off of the presentation is, so we have a deficit of 425, we've cut out 338.
Yep.
So does that mean that we would have come in with a deficit of 350 plus thousand
Yes.
of a deficit this year?
Yes.
What was their deficit last year?
Last year, you were at 252,000, but the reason that's lower is because you just had done the Headley roll-up. So it was like between 22, 23, and 24, 25, it's the first time you were receiving those funds.
Okay, so how much, do we know the reduction of the Headley? Because we're gonna run into the same thing
Yep,
next year.
it's gonna happen again. So I can't predict what it will be next year at this point, but I can tell you that when you rolled it up and you restored it, you're already back down from 3.5 mils to 3.4542. So you've lost over half a mil already.
In half a mil, so 0.5 mil?
Yeah,
And
200 grand?
yeah.
200 grand. Okay, so,
And there's that 200 grand between your deficit last year and your deficit this year. Now, the reason that that number would have continued to increase, you have to remember that the police increased by that.
right.
A lot of that would be
Right.
that cost.
okay, that's very helpful for painting that picture. Did we have a conversation yet, because I don't believe I saw it reflected in this, of, if you remember, we had the conversation when we presented the police budget of, well, our staff is doing some of the services on behalf of the police, or were they reimbursing some of those services that we're providing through the staff?
We're pretty separate now. So that was an older way of operations. It's my understanding, like, one good example of that was like payroll. It used to all come through this office, but it was police. We're not really like that anymore. There was a little bit of a confusion over some copy spending this year, but that was pretty minimal. But for the most part, the police department manages their own expenses. We're not really, other than, you know, we take a big chunk, we give them the budget out of our general fund.
Yeah.
So it's kind of confusing, but they operate within that budget. There isn't services necessarily that I can think of that we're providing over here in entirety. Now, there are some HR services, there are some retirement account services, or like we have some retiree healthcare over there, and that became a little bit of an issue, and there was a dispute, and that was my time, and that was Susan's time. And
Yeah.
so that definitely does happen, but for the most part, when we're looking from a budgeting perspective, most police expenses are properly allocated over there.
Okay, and for purposes of budgeting, totally makes sense. Do you think that there's an opportunity to do, whenever something comes up where it takes
Yes.
administrative burden, that we can then try and do some type of a, again, calculated recapture?
Yes.
Right.
I think that's actually a really good idea and can be very strategic budgeting. So it should be something that we look at. The only thing that I would say to that is at the end of the day, when the police doesn't spend their entire budget, it just goes back into our general fund.
Yeah.
So it all ends up in the same spot, but it might be interesting data points to kind of look at. But at the end of the day, any money that's not spent over at the police department ends right back up in our general fund. And then we take it out fresh the next year for them.
Right, but if we were able to essentially do the calculation of our staff time, it would be charged against the sheet of the police and then reimbursed at 35% by Bingham. That's why I'm asking, because yes, it comes back, but
Okay.
it's still a revenue.
Interesting.
It is adjusting revenues,
Yep.
not necessarily revenues, but
David, that's a great point that I
That is
don't
a
know
good
if
point.
we've ever really looked into, is when we go back and
Right.
adjust our budget and have to spend more
Yeah.
for police, do we go back and
They
collect
do,
that?
yeah.
We do, okay.
So I can tell you that that communication has been terrible in the
Okay,
past.
yeah.
And that for the most part, Bingham Farms saw one budget presentation and said, oh, that was good, that was a budget, we paid you that. And then halfway through the year, when we did a budget amendment, it typically was not communicated over there. And I know that because I work really closely with Bingham
Yeah.
Farms. That's one of my management strategies over here, is to be communicating. So I went over there and talked to them last week and brought up the whole budget amendment that we passed. It was like $200,000 for the police this year that we had passed, and they weren't aware of that. And the reason that that got triggered to them was, you presented the budget, you said it only increased by 3.4%, but my number says 15, and I'm like, it's because you don't have the budget amendment, so you actually owe us more. So what I will say is, at the end of the day, it evens out in the wash because we're audited for it each year in December. And during that audit, if Bingham Farms owes us more money for the police department, it comes out and we get it back. But how clean has that communication been? That's a lot of trust at the end in the auditor, and it's also not fair to Bingham Farms, because they don't have any information, then they just get hit with a bill, and they don't get the courtesy of even knowing what that service was for or providing any feedback on it. So that's not how Chief Lawson and I are operating. We're very much operating in lockstep with Bingham Farms, to the point where I invited the Bingham Farms administrators to sit in on our contract negotiations so they knew what was going on. If we had a budget amendment right now that affected the PD, it would immediately go to Bingham Farms, probably before it even came here, and I would say, hey, just so you know, this is going to our council on Monday night. If you have questions, let's talk about it. If you want me to go over there and talk about it, I'll do that. So these are good points, and I can see what you mean by like staff administration. Like, it wouldn't matter if it was just Franklin, but it's not just Franklin, and so that is a good point. Let me mull that over and think of more examples of where that could be used and try to keep track of that as we move through. I think it would make sense to do that 6 months from now in a budget amendment.
Yeah.
I think we talked about this 2 months ago when I brought up that you said like 50% of the first 3 months of this year was spent on police
Yeah.
negotiations. And so every 3 years,
Yeah.
they'll see like an increase
In time.
in time for
Right.
you. So 50% of your salary for a quarter of the year was spent to benefit them directly on their police
No, it's-
force. So that's,
It's a
I
good
think we
point.
brought up a couple months ago.
It's a good point. So let's take a look at it in 6-month chunks for the next 6 months. I'm gonna remain more cognizant of that and try to keep track of it, those data points in a different way. And then it might make sense for us to bring forth an entirely separate budget amendment, not our regular December one that has all of our stuff on it too, but that just accounts for that, and talk to Bingham Farms about it.
Is there ever any animosity, so like in that scenario where we're saying 50% of your time, 1/4 of the year, every 3 years is spent doing that, is there ever any animosity around, is that actually true or accurate? Any pushback in that way?
It depends on the relationship and the communication, but I have built really strong relationships over there, and I've been really transparent with Bingham Farms. I mean, I allowed Ken to come sit in all of our negotiations, and he didn't even play an active role, just so he could see what we're doing.
Yeah.
I kept him on all of the email threads so he could see all of the work that I'm putting in. So no, not until it becomes a question, but I'm very transparent and I keep good records, so I don't see where that would. Bingham Farms, their biggest reservations are one, in past years, it had been insinuated that they weren't paying their fair share, and that went over like a lead balloon, and I don't believe that at all. Bingham Farms has been nothing but an excellent partner, and we have a beautiful police force to prove that, and that was taken with a lot of offense and created some animosity. But we've corrected that. And then I think that the other thing is just like not being included and not knowing what's going on, and then just receiving bills and not even getting an opportunity to communicate with their council where these bills are coming from. But Chief Lawson and I have changed that dynamic. I mean, this is the first time the administrator, I went over and presented this budget to them, you know? And that's the first time that this has ever happened. And I took questions from their council too. So I think that it's so important to frame as we move forward in 2 small communities, we are going to need to share more services. And I've said this to Bingham Farms, and I'm saying it here, and I'll say it a million times. Cross-functional governments are the future. We are not going to be able to afford everything on our own all the time. And so we need to look for ways to continue to work together. We work together on our police, we work together on our fire, but we need to keep open minds and open lines of communication to find ways to continue to share costs by working together, because we're too small to survive for the level of service that we want for our residents on our own in the long term. And that's just a general government strategy that's happening everywhere.
Excellent.
So,
Go ahead.
sorry.
Dave, well, David, you got
Are we
more?
going in
No,
order?
that's it.
Okay.
That's it.
No, no. I mean,
No,
we're
no,
going
good. I
anywhere.
was just asking questions around.
So I have like content-based questions and I have procedural questions. Just in general, when I ask questions, it's not like I'm not going to support something. I totally support police and fire, but there is going to be a trade-off. So knowing that I wanted to support the police and fire contracts that would cost our residents more was my intent, than to go into this budget and look at ways to cut things that weren't as important as police and fire. So when it comes to, and we talked about this a couple meetings ago, the life cycle of IT equipment. So why is it that every year we're increasing the budget for computer equipment and supplies when like it should be like, okay, this is the year we purchase this equipment. The next 4 years is its life cycle, and then we'll have another big purchase in 5 years.
It's a good question, but you have to think about how much staffing changes. So you see it increase because I needed a new computer
I knew
comparative,
last year.
right? And so did Chief in this past year.
Yeah.
And then we got more staff than over here at the PD, which caused an increase in technology. I would say in general, we run our laptops into the ground. But like, I'm bringing over a new economic development director. I don't have a laptop that is up to speed that would be able to give them. Now, they don't need anything fancy. I'm big on, you know, I mean, like, this is a refurbished computer, and this was the new one that you bought me, right? So it's nothing fancy. But to answer your question, I mean, those are type of things that you see in capital improvement plans. We don't have one here, and I haven't had any time to prepare one. So you would see like mass replacements in there, but it's always changing when staffing is changing.
Okay, so that's what I looked at. So I went through the administrative line item, computer equipment and supplies, $15,340. Then the clerk has a separate line item for her community equipment and supplies. Then the community programs has a separate line item for their computer equipment and supplies. So all these 3 different lines are getting their own budget for computer equipment and supplies. So like, I totally agree with you. Community programs, when a new ED comes in, should get computer equipment and supplies. But like, why are our clerks and why are yours next year the same? And
Just can I add to that?
Yeah.
So computer equipment and supplies includes Microsoft licensing, BSNA licensing. It includes IT support. It includes the BSNA. You need a separate software support fee so that they can program things. And it includes, this year, it includes a village server update because we've been told that we have to have some sort of server update here. We are absolutely operating in a danger zone where we risk losing everything that we have on our server because the technology is so outdated. So it says computer equipment and supplies, but it also covers other things, and it's not necessarily just like physical laptops.
okay, is that coming out of administration or is?
That one is the administration. I mean, I can give you it's all in the budget though, in the footnotes of where and how things are broken
So
down.
can we reduce the computer equipment and supplies and office supplies line items from the clerk fund since it's coming out of the administrative fund?
It's not the same though. That includes, so in that one, the 215 accounts, it includes the 2,500. What else do we pay out of that one?
I mean, basically, we're taking the computers, like the monthly charge and charging it out of
So
admin, clerk, economic development.
So you-
breaking it apart.
So we get one bill for like IT services, and then we allocate 50% goes into admin, 25% goes into clerk. So you can't really, and some goes over into buildings, so you can't really cut it, because then you would say the clerk can't ever have any IT support. It's not necessarily related to a direct cost. And I get that that's confusing, but that's how fund accounting works for municipalities. So we take overall bills, the total Microsoft Office subscription, and then we divide it out. And then that portion goes into the administration salary or administration community supplies, and then Dana still needs an office subscription, so then that goes over there. So it's not for new equipment. Nope, you didn't get any new equipment. I'm not planning on putting any new equipment over there. That's not for equipment per se. It's a percentage of a cost.
Okay, and to that point, when we're using Office 365, why aren't we optimizing that platform? Like, why are we, like, we've talked about this for a couple meetings, like, should we not be paying less for toner and less for printing and less for copiers because we are modernizing and digitizing and like, do we need to be printing the stuff? Like, I'm trying to.
Well, like I said, we're trying to address that. Things like printing need to go out to bid. They haven't gone out to bid. Now, we did vet. I have 3 different ones to look at right now to try to save cost on that. But this isn't necessarily like, I agree that our contracts need to go out to bid, and printing can be one of those.
So to that point, like, to your multifunctional cross-coordination government strategy, a lot of procurements, we can leverage contract vehicles from the county, you know, for like public works, for printing, for cleaning, for a lot of that. So I agree with you that I think that is like the strategy we need to employ moving forward, because I don't think that, I think it's gonna be like super time consuming to like put every contract out to bid, like to your point, it's something that you guys don't have time for. So I agree with you that like we won't be able to do our own contract for every service that we wanna provide. But would it not be, would we not be able to reduce some of those office computer equipment and supplies budget, considering the move to technology?
I do not think so. I looked at it and they're really for our necessary softwares that we're using.
They'd still need to use the machines.
Yeah.
They still need license access
BSNA
across all Microsoft.
Super expensive, and we use so many functions of BSNA. I get that it's a large cost, but it's a really dense program and we rely on it heavily. It collects our taxes. We administrate our building department through it. We do all our budgeting through it. So like each one of those sections of BSNA is its own cost associated. So I definitely can see where that plays into this budget, but those things are just necessary.
And then you said, the Plant Moran, is that accounting service out of the administrative fund?
It's divided. Some of it comes out of police, some of it comes out of administrative.
And that's been reduced?
I took $25,000 out of it.
Okay. And the contracted services, what is the clerk contracted services at $7,000?
It's just to continue the codification project that council voted on last year. So we already spent $6,000 on it. I have cut that cost. Originally it was 20. I have absorbed that work with Peter and with Chris Duzen to get that bill down to 7, but we need to finish the project that we started, otherwise we lose all the progress that we were making.
This is the AMLAW project?
Yeah,
So did we contract with someone to do that?
AMLO.
Okay, and they had like a year to do it?
It was in phases. The council voted, they did the first phase, now we're in the second phase where we're just actually completing the codification. Do you have anything to add to that, Peter?
No, she's accurate. They're working with us as far as time.
Are we using AI tools to?
Well, AmLaw
help
is an
with
AI
that?
tool. I guess that's, so that's what
It's AmLegal.
or AmLegal, sorry. That's, and I don't need to get into the semantics of it. I'm just interested in that contract too, because when they billed it to us, it was not a $20,000 to review all your ordinances. It was an extremely low number. So I'm surprised that that's now moving.
So they review, there's a difference between the review and the implementation.
And that was my concern, and I had called that out in the initial meeting, is like, sure, you can flag everything that may have, it's again, right, like your paywall. It's like, hey, we
Yep.
found 32 issues in
We
your
got
ordinances.
a 132-page report
Right.
of where our ordinances are outdated and contradict with state law. Peter, Chris Dusen, and I have absorbed as much of that work as
Yeah.
we possibly could to
Okay.
get that bill down, and it's still an ongoing project. I mean, you could cut it, but we would lose all that progress.
Yeah, I'm
that
just
we've
interested
made.
at like what, again,
I don't know.
you
I
all
wasn't
have the
here
contract, you
during
handle it.
the
I know,
initial
it's an
discussion.
unfortunate situation.
And so what it sounds like is like, we've gone through and you've covered the basics of just getting us to a baseline.
Yeah.
And next year is, now we call out things for bid when you have the time, the energy.
Yep.
And the opportunity to do those things.
Yep.
So to revisit these bids that have been in place for a very long time or are so long overdue for revisiting, but you just haven't had the time to do it. Is that the net of it?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
I think that's the ongoing savings.
I mean, that's, and like, so, and to piggyback off that, we get back to a foundational spot, we can assess what the need is as far as additional revenue, which is a conversation we're gonna need to have. And then we can align on council priorities and start budgeting for projects to actually get them over the line.
So, sorry, you keep going.
Yeah, okay, the $20,000 for contracted services for community programs last year was 0. What is that?
It, for community programs, that's Main Street, yeah. So we've always given $20,000 to Main Street. We changed how we were doing it last year. It used to just be like a $20,000 allocation. And then instead of transferring all of that money right over to Main Street and letting them keep it in a separate account that we don't have any control over, we decided to keep the allocations spread out amongst our accounts over here.
Okay, who approves the money that comes out of that 20,000? It would be.
I do, unless
Okay.
it reaches over $10,000.
So
That's
is,
council budget.
is contracted services?
What account number, please?
This is just general. Can goods come out of contracted services or services PSCs? Professional services?
No, they're professional services, they're not for goods. Because I put footnotes in everything.
Yeah, so what I'm interested in, and I'll just get to it. If we're hiring economic development director.
Yes.
Which is professional services, why do we need contracted services in the same account at $20,000?
Oh, because the economic development director and what we're paying for that is not the same as the allocation that we give to Main Street.
Okay, so that's what I mean. We give Main Street, that's Main Street's budget.
Correct.
Okay, yeah,
We've
that's what I
always
was
done
trying to
that.
get at.
Like,
Okay.
even before I came over here, I tried to find the resolution where it was established. It used to be established by annual agreements, but now we don't transfer 20 grand over there in order to maintain some fiscal control. And if we don't spend it all, then we get to keep it in our general fund, and they're not keeping it in
So
their
it says
account.
contracted services, but it could just be any expenses from Main Street.
No, it's contracted services, and it's related to contracted services. So the services are putting up and taking down the street banners is an example, providing small business workshops is an example. Like, they actually are contracted services, not for general supplies.
Oh, okay. So to the point, the economic development director, my proposal was to make it at 60,000 because if that person is doing contracted services such as running these small business workshops or.
They're not. Those are through the county.
Yeah, so then 18 months ago, we had a number of candidates at 60,000 and now we have to go up to 75. And I think that to Pam's point of like, if we want media strategists, ad hoc, who are really good at communications, are we gonna find someone who's really good at communications, really good at business development, really good at coalition building, or should we keep that at 60,000, have 15,000 to play with, to have, there's been residents come up to me and they're like, I'll do your social media for $600 a month. So that's where I'm asking, like, if we already have budget for contracted services for Main Street, we hire economic development director who's really good at doing business development, and then we don't find a jack of all trades because we want someone who's precisely great at communication, public engagement, municipal outreach.
I don't think it's a stretch. Those all go and feed off of each
So we
other.
can
I
find-
am an economic development director. That is where I got my start in government, and we are in communications and in community engagement. It's such a strong role in economic development. I think it saves us money to roll that responsibility into an economic development director. Now, if council wants to remove that salary back down to 60, okay, I'll repost for the job and we'll take in new applications for it. That's not a problem. We can absolutely do that. But I think it will save us in the long term to bring all of those services in-house in one person. And it's not like we're asking a finance person to be really good at community engagement. These areas of government and public administration go hand in hand.
And you already have someone in mind for this position, and that person is not gonna accept 60,000.
True, but we could repost and.
I understand, but
if you
were point of fact.
You wouldn't hire somebody that didn't have the skills needed to cover the
No.
gap between the 60 and the
No way.
75 and give them the 75. If you found someone that you really liked, but as Angelina said, really couldn't do that extra $15,000 worth of work,
Oh, then we
you'd have to
would-
tell them, you're only making 60 grand if you can't do all the
Yeah, and
other
you're not meeting like the job description, but I think you're great and you have space to grow, but I'm gonna have to hire someone else to do communications.
Going in,
That
the
would be
intent is
adjusted.
there's 75 allocated for all the work.
Yeah.
And if you
Including
can
like-
find a human that can do all the work, then they should warrant the 75 grand.
Yep.
But if not, then it needs to be broken out.
Yep,
And that includes like social media platforms.
absolutely.
Okay. And then, can I call a closed session for the rest of my?
Well, I still have, but
Yeah,
we
let's
go
do
into
that.
closed session, let's get into,
Okay.
go through everything else.
Sorry, I'll just procedural too.
Discuss with the closed session.
Section 8, number 2, are we, in accordance with that, of the charter?
Well,
Repeat your question.
hang on, that's where I'm gonna get into this topic, so I just wanna make sure that we do it in like, that what I want, personally, with the budget, Meg, you were put into an impossible position because you've been dealing with trying to clean up chaos, right? Which is a difficult thing. And the reason that I think it is a impossible position is because I think it's been lost on council over the years that our charter mandates that the budget that we pass does not exceed the revenues that we take in. And we have totally lost sight of that, which means year after year after year, the council sitting up here is violating the charter. And we're gonna have to do that again this year because I can't imagine a budget in which we can cut $438,000.
There's no way.
So I just want to be cognizant when we think about and we look for, I get the process of, we get into these conversations and we talk about 60,000 versus 75,000 for an economic development director, that yes, it is a bigger problem, but we still owe, at least I like to think that at least if we're doing the best we can, if we're going against the charter, and we are. A vote in favor of this budget, just as the year before, and the year before that, and the year before that, are all votes against our charter.
Can I get,
Well,
can you get a
when
legal
we
opinion on
fell
that?
into a deficit, it was over $500,000 that the village had to spend to resurrect the sidewalk program that was stopped by legal action. That's where we first fell into deficit, $500,000. And we've never been able to recover since then.
But this dates back to 2018.
That's
We've been.
about right.
Oh, it
we've
goes
been-
before that.
But, right, our records show before that, and that's what I'm saying is that, like, the issue that I struggle with in this vote is knowing that I read the charter, and our job is to uphold the charter, and we have to take a vote against the charter. And that's not something that I do lightly. And I have a lot of different questions around, like, for instance, I do think one of the things that we should consider is, like, it's a lot of time to go through and figure out, like, the process that you went to allocating things over into the building department, which should have been done years ago, right? To help try and alleviate some of this. Does it make sense to have an in-house treasurer? I don't know. Is that something that we need to consider so that our time is better, that we have somebody who can be allocated and used for the purpose of being able to deliver year after year a budget that is within the charter, right? Within the revenues, to be able to go out and,
It's not possible to deliver a budget within the revenues right now.
No,
but-
right now, right, that's what
but
I'm
I
saying.
hear what you're
I
saying,
agree
yeah.
with you, right? Is like, that's why, again, I started with, you were put in an impossible task because at the end of the day, what we're supposed to do is deliver a budget that is within the revenues, and that that can't be done. And so I'm just trying to think about what are opportunities for us moving forward to not regress into this position where council either feels comfortable, everybody should be uncomfortable voting against our charter.
It's just so confusing for me that this is the first time that this conversation is
100%
happening at this
agree.
table right now.
So since that statement is a real showstopper, Peter, do you have any comments about this? Can we proceed with the budget tonight under the circumstances? I'm not willing to not approve this budget tonight, or at least get it to a vote. I wish you would have brought that question up when we could do something about it. But I don't even know.
I got this budget on Monday.
No.
But for 6 years,
I'm not
but there's
blaming-
nothing we can do about it either.
budget's
Like, it's not possible to
No, it's
have
not.
a balanced
Yeah.
budget too,
So-
you know?
So let's decide what we're gonna do with David's question, so that we can continue with our budget discussion.
I have another point of order. I mean, just in general, are we not supposed to follow the charter? Are we not advised on following the charter? Like, so chapter 9, section 8, number 2. I don't even know if we're in accordance with that. subsection. And so it's hard for us, for me in particular, not to want to read this charter as everyone here, every public meeting advises us to do, and then hold my tongue when I know we're in violation of it. And then I'm getting asked by people, why are you asking questions? Why are you asking questions? Let's not lawyer, let's not lawyer. Well, guess what happens when you don't lawyer? $500,000 in debt because the council violated the charter, put a sidewalk, and we're gonna go forward with the sidewalk without a charter amendment. So reading the charter saves the village money because it reduces our litigation risk. So like that is where I'm so confused with the animosity with asking questions, performing due diligence, making sure we perform our fiduciary duty. Because when we don't, we get checked by residents who can read a charter and then they sue us. And then we have to hire litigation counsel in order to defend ourselves, which happened 3 years ago.
Well-
And then the council will say, we were poorly advised by legal. So it's just like,
If we want to have a charter conversation, let's have a charter conversation, but I'm just, again, my goal is not, let's talk about the charter at length. It is, we are here to pass a budget. There is a portion of the budget that is listed in our charter. I take that very serious.
I don't know, what was that?
What's wrong, Mike?
Everything.
Why?
Mr. and Mrs. Solly should go and start their own community somewhere. Why are you guys
Mike,
picking
it's
apart
completely inappropriate to
everything?
say.
That is
It is
inappropriate to
completely
say.
It
but-
is not inappropriate.
Yes, it is.
It's,
It is-
it's
it is-
transparent.
lacks
So,
decorum.
hang on, real quick though, I do want to,
Excuse me? What did you just say to me?
I didn't say anything.
What did you say to me?
I didn't say anything.
Did you just tell me to shut up?
No, I said that to myself.
That's inappropriate, Mike.
Yeah.
Have some decorum, please.
I'll try.
Please.
It's very
Do your
difficult.
best.
President, can you take
Yeah,
a break?
let's
That is-
focus on
No, I
what
think
we're
we need to
doing.
take 5. No trustee should be talking to another trustee like that.
Unbelievable.
That is degrading.
Guys, please.
No, please, who are you talking to? Talk to the person who made it.
Guys, time out, all right? Mike, let's keep things focused on our objective. Our objective is to deal with the budget, all right? Let's take personalities out of this right now, all right? We have an objective, we have a duty. David has raised a point. I don't think anybody's really done a full analysis of every word in section 9 of chapter 9 to determine whether or not we're quote-unquote violating the charter. But I don't think that we can today or in the course of the next 2 weeks find a way to fix the problem. So if this is something that's been a problem and councils have been not following this, then the duty is on us to find a way to fix it. And unfortunately, I don't know how many times I can keep saying the same thing, which is this isn't an expenditure problem. If we are spending too much money, which is more than we have the appropriation to spend, then we need to go and unfortunately ask our residents to pay more in taxes so that we aren't in that situation. Because there's no way to eliminate $400,000 in expenses.
I mean,
You guys are trying it and you're not even remotely close.
No, I think there was a silver bullet. Trustee Gates brought up a few months ago, like we need to look at healthcare benefits.
Sure, but that's a long
salary.
Yeah, and-
100%. I'm
is
saying there are
down the
things
road.
that can be done, but not in the immediate.
But not tonight.
But we've been running a deficit for a while, and it's never,
over 10
ever,
years.
yeah, it's never been an issue. And yes, I don't disagree that it may be a violation of the charter, but there's nothing we can do about it. Otherwise, we just have to raise our taxes.
But I do
And
think-
we are reticent to do that,
But I
right?
do think, again, what my goal is not to do is cause shock and awe by saying that there is a provision within our charter that, to me, reads pretty clear, and it needs to be a priority of this council, because, despite the fact we have become desensitized, we truly have. If we have had 10 years of ignoring this particular part of the charter, but then we'll stand behind and stand on the charter for everything else. And if that is prioritizing for 25, 2026, getting the narrative out and getting the education of constituents to increase our tax base to fix it, absolutely. But I still feel it important that if I vote in favor of a budget that's going to go against the charter, that I make it clear that I am cognizant of the fact that that is happening, and I want to push for a direction
Have
forward.
you not voted in favor each and every year since you've been on council?
I was only, one, I think I've only voted for 2 budgets since I've been on council.
You've
2,
been on council 4 years?
no,
2.
2.
2.
Oh, 2 years.
He's in, yeah.
Yeah, so last year I voted for a budget, brand new, it was a nightmare of a process that I was extremely frustrated with.
And there was contingency.
Hang on, I can speak. That I was extremely frustrated with last year. You can go back and look at how frustrated I was through it. And then this year I went into the charter and was reading the charter and actually read this provision. So I was not informed, I was ignorant to it last year. I'm informed to it this year. So I wanted to make sure that everybody was equally informed where I wasn't last year. So we know that this needs to be a priority for us.
So I hear what you're saying, if I can speak, but I don't see any way to fix that tonight.
Agreed.
And we have to adopt this budget.
I agree.
So I don't think we can ignore what's being said, and that has to be part of a future conversation. And if that is the case, then it needs to be corrected. And just because it's been wrong for 10 years doesn't make it still right. And so I think it is appropriate to call that out in a transparent fashion right now. But I don't see how that changes the budget that we have in front of us tonight or the
No, it doesn't.
situation that we're in.
I just want to say one last thing. Wouldn't it have been more appropriate, David, for you to bring this up in legal? You're on legal, yeah?
Yeah, I'm in legal.
Okay, so instead of bringing it up here, where there's nothing we can do about it, if you had that concern, why not bring it up at legal? So we
Monday-
could address it before we get to council.
Yeah, so to be clear, the timeline of this was on Monday, is just before the Monday meeting.
Yeah.
Is where I received the fact that the budget. Now, in the budget meeting, I asked specifically about the deficit, was not aware that we'd be having a deficit until I asked the question for clarification on it, realizing that there was no way we were ever gonna pass a budget that didn't include that. And then after the fact, I discovered that in the charter. So this is my first opportunity to have that conversation. I didn't this is all transacted within the past week. That goes back to and again.
Okay, I accept that. I just feel we don't want to grandstand. We want to be factual. And if you knew about this, I would have encouraged you to bring it up to legal. That's what legal is for.
I would have, this is not me grandstanding.
Well, we've had a deficit for years. You knew that, right? You didn't know that we had a deficit all
I had no idea how long we've had this deficit for, because otherwise our general fund would have already been depleted.
And that's not
No.
actually true.
No.
Like, we've had a deficit for over 10 years. We
that's
slowly can
public
build
record.
back up because it's just on the budget. So we typically underspend on budgets, so these are projected deficits. But like, if you go to the slide that shows general fund balance, you see an increase and decrease. We still have a general fund balance. We're not running in the red. We still
Right, I
have
get
money,
that.
right?
Yes.
And so you can see years where the general fund balance, even when there was a deficit in the budget, that it increases based on different revenue streams or depending on what happened in that year. But it is true that for well over 10 years that this village has been operating on budgets that are presenting deficits. Absolutely. That was true. That was a known fact when I was in Franklin last time. I remember hearing it at a meeting.
And that's my only point.
And everyone
I was
knew it
just
was
saying-
against the charter?
I was just
I
saying,
think
no,
no
I don't.
one's ever said anything about the charter, but I pulled data easily from 2018 showing that we've been doing it. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying that can we as a council try and figure out what the path forward is tonight with a budget? Because I don't know how we fix that tonight.
We
and
don't-
we have to adopt a budget.
So let me just say, I apologize for losing my temper, Trustee Gates. And I'm not trying to indict you. I'm simply saying if you had a question, and this has been coming up a lot, that we try to address these things before we get to the public session, so we don't bring the public into things that there's nothing we can do about in this case. The deficit is a problem. We all know it. The only solution to the problem is to raise our taxes. None of us want to do that. And I think the public is aware of that. But our public records are showing a deficit for 10 years.
Yeah.
And if you didn't know that before you ran for council, well,
Well, the reason I ran for council is for the good administration of government. And so I feel like I am doing exactly what I did for my platform, which is raising awareness of these things and the importance of them, let alone the fact that, again, I do think that I defer strongly to the committees that we have. And so the finance committee, I expect that the prime function of the finance committee is to have most of these conversations. Again, said multiple times tonight, not a numbers guy. I would love to come in, have a balanced budget and say, I deferred and trusted the other trustees. Check. I'm not moving. I'm not going to question what the due diligence that they put into it. That's not what happened.
I hear you. But you are an attorney and you're on the legal committee, so that carries some.
No problem.
weight that-
I will prioritize the charter and some deviations from the charter for the legal committee moving forward.
And
Is our attorney, are we not supposed to be advised on this? Like, let's just go into section 8, chapter 9, section 8, subsection 2. Was this posted a week? Or are we even like, I don't even know if we noticed this public hearing correctly.
I'd like to make a point of order, please. I think that you're raising an interesting topic, but I'd like to get through the budget review and make sure that everybody on the table has a chance to ask questions and get their questions answered. If you can find a way to just park your concerns for right now so we can get through this.
And bring it up in like 30 minutes.
Well, we are.
I don't think we can solve the charter issues this evening. We have to address them, but we have to be able to pass a budget. I think we need to continue on our budget train and continue to discuss this budget. We can't be ignorant and forget about these other conversations, but there has to be a different forum for us to sit and talk about these charter
I'm
violations.
just asking for when the clerk noticed the meeting.
I'm not privy to that, we can ask the clerk.
Okay, but if it wasn't noticed 1 week in advance of the public hearing, are we allowed to adopt this budget?
Point of order, please.
It was posted 15 days, we are allowed 6 days before a public hearing for a budget.
The budget was posted?
Act 2 was, and at any point, anybody could have come in and requested the budget
Oh,
at
so the
that
public
point.
got it before we did?
It's not the public, the notice went out
This
15
said
days ago.
summaries of the budget.
And that was going, that was for the third.
So it
Where
wasn't.
are we going with all this? I'm just trying to get.
I don't think we can actually
Let's vote on the budget.
Because we didn't notice it correctly according to the charter.
That's not true.
Like, we're in violation of this charter, and even apart from the revenues and appropriations, like, the
Are we in
simple
violation
thing
of the charter,
of
Dana?
posting a summary of it.
Okay, why are we not in violation of the charter, Dana?
6 days from when it was posted for you to review, it's the day's date. You had until today to pull the budget if you had concerns.
It says 1 week, so that would be last Monday.
According to Plant Moran and every place I've studied, it says 6 days. We're required, and I noticed it's 15 days prior, and it was posted. And if I put it on the
Okay.
website.
Well, we can say that a week is 6 days, but it's talking about summary of the budget, but that's fine. I'm just saying, you guys, this is how people sue villages, and this is how we get in
Okay.
litigation risk.
Thank you for that.
Thanks for that, we appreciate that, that's.
I mean,
I'd like
do
to-
you?
I'd like
Because
to-
I've
I'd
been
like to-
told
I'd
for
like to
6
work
months
on
that
the
we don't know
budget.
what we're doing, and then we learn that the council members on here who have been in here for years and years know what they're doing. And then when we bring it up, we're told, just be quiet, it's okay.
Hang on, I at least want to clarify my
Nobody said
position.
don't say anything.
That was not, and equally, that
She
was.
told me to check my concern. And I
No,
said,
no, no,
"Been
no.
for 30 minutes?
No, I said, my question was, could we please take your concerns and deal with it in a forum other than right now, when we're here to walk through the budget and hopefully approve it tonight? If we don't, we
We're
have
in
to
what,
schedule.
violation of the charter?
Yeah, we are.
And we
yes.
already are. So
Okay.
We're cherry picking what we care about.
Hang on,
No,
I
I
just,
really disagree.
the only thing that I want to do real quick with one statement is just to clarify for the record in candor to my other trustees, none of my statements were to discuss prior actions of the council. It was merely to make sure that we create a priority for going forward And so, again, I hope nobody took it as an indictment against their serving to this community. And again, was only a motivation for establishing an agreed upon path forward. So, sorry if it was taken any other way.
It was not taken that way, but any other way by me. It sounded like a comment that it was derailing a discussion that was really about the budget, and it wasn't something I felt like we could do something about tonight. We've gone around about it now. I'm not prepared to address it tonight, but I've made a note of it, and I would like to talk about it at a dedicated time with proper preparation. If everybody's okay with that. I want to hear everybody tonight. We've heard from you, David, we've heard from you, Angelina. If you're done, great. If you're not, keep asking questions, but I'd like a shot at asking questions too.
No, the rest of
Also.
mine are for closed session, so we can go.
Well, I think that before we even discuss moving into closed session, one, you have to say why we're doing that, but two, we should take a vote on the budget.
First of all, we have a
and
motion
take
and a second actually on the table.
Yeah,
so
Dana, get ready for
unless
a roll
those have
call.
unless those have been withdrawn, I'm gonna say, let's take a shot at the current budget. If it fails, then we can go into discussions on how you want to chop it up.
Okay, let's vote.
Hold on, go ahead.
Nothing, I mean, do we discuss things in our last closed session that aren't reflected in this budget? So do we now want to discuss those things in open, or would we?
We're not discussing personnel performance, which I think is what you're hinting at in a public meeting.
Personnel salary.
But
That's in the
you can
proposed
talk,
budget.
you can talk money, dollar and cents on a budget, but you can't bring up personnel performance in conjunction with those, because those are two separate conversations. Regardless, before we move into a closed session, we need to take a vote on the current budget and see if a closed session is even warranted.
Okay, so for this budget, it reflects salaries of the unauthorized raises that we just passed through an amendment, but those salaries weren't returned to what they were before Roger gave those raises.
Yes, it is not my recommendation as the administrator to lower the salaries of many of the current staff.
Even though the assistant administrator's salary was partly because economic development director roles were included in that, and now we're hiring another economic development director.
Agreed.
And your recommendation is to keep that salary?
It is. Her role is assistant administrator / finance / HR. She fills a lot of
Point of
roles
order.
over here.
Point of order. Peter, I don't know who addresses the point of order. We're getting dangerously close to covering topics that we should otherwise be in closed session for. So real quick, just let me finish. Yes, we will be taking a vote on the current budget. We're currently in deliberation. If we're getting into deliberation regarding things that we would be in closed session for, do we go into closed session before the vote, or do we ignore that deliberation and complete the vote?
I'm assuming, so there's only a few allocated reasons to go into closed session. And I think what we're alluding to is dismissal, suspension, disciplining, or to hear complaints, or consider periodic personnel evaluation of an employee if that specific employee requests it. Is that where we're headed? Because if that's the case, then you can go into closed session, but any type of decisions have to be made.
In an open session.
Yeah, of course. I'm just saying that we're starting to talk about salary, compensation, scope of duties. We're getting really close to that line.
You can go into closed session anytime you guys, for any reason allocated in the OMA statute. So if you want to go into a closed session now, it would take a motion.
Well, there's a motion on the table, so we would.
Yeah, that would have to resurface, but
Sorry, the point that I'm making is, the point of order that I'm specifically looking for is, what is about to happen is that we still have one trustee who wants to have deliberation regarding a topic of closed session, with other trustees looking to move to a vote before that closed session would occur. So is that something that can happen? Or if somebody wants to hold deliberation regarding a topic that would warrant closed session, do we have to move to closed session?
you can change the process midstream like what you guys are suggesting.
What does the president want?
I move to go to closed session. you're,
I personally would like to call the vote
Yes.
and see where we stand on the current budget. If the current budget fails, then we need to go into the current budget, and if, in order to go into the current budget, it requires a closed session, because the items that you want to go into in the budget require a closed session, then I think a closed session would be appropriate.
doesn't it say closed session? So weren't we gonna go into
No.
it either way or not?
No, the closed session was set there if
Oh,
in
just in
fact,
case,
if
okay.
in fact, a topic came up that warranted
Like
a
this.
closed session. Yeah, and I still believe it would require one of the parties being discussed to say, go into closed session, I don't want it being discussed.
Which I do have
That's
in
correct.
writing.
That's correct.
Say it again?
So
I do have that.
you have to have the person that is being discussed, the periodic personnel evaluation, say, I want it to go into closed session. It can't be you guys.
But we're
You
not
can't go
doing,
into closed
oh,
session.
we're not
You
doing
can,
an
as long as the
evaluation, are
employee
we?
says.
We're just doing you want to have a discussion on salaries, I believe,
Yeah.
right?
I think, so are we taking a vote on this then, or are
Okay,
we
so
moving
we have
into
another
closed
motion.
session?
Again, we still have a motion on the table that I'm gonna call the vote for. I was just allowing additional discussion, but I'm still gonna call the vote before we go into any closed sessions on a separate matter. I think we need to vote on a motion and a second of the budget that our village administrator, who we rely upon, presented to us as what she believes to be the best budget for the village. Notwithstanding David's comments, which albeit are intriguing, seem to be something that has been going on for a while and maybe something that we need to look into moving forward, but I don't think can be solved tonight nor resolve what happened from prior councils. And I still don't know if, I'd like to still continue reading this paragraph to fully understand if in fact it's not being followed. But for the time being, we have a motion and a second that was approved, or that was seconded. So I'm gonna say, Dana, can we take a call, the vote on approving the budget as been presented by the village administrator?
Trustee Salzer,
Yes.
trustee Hansen,
Yes.
trustee Solly,
Abstain.
trustee Solako,
No.
trustee Gates,
Yes.
trustee Ferris,
I'm voting no because trustee Sulakwa has indicated that certain aspects of this she would like to discuss in closed session first, and out of deference to that request, I'm voting no.
President Goldberg,
Yes.
Passes.
it passes.
4-3.
Motion passes. Do we have a budget?
Okay.
Okay, make a motion to go into closed session.
Yeah,
Sure.
you can, as long as it's seconded and approved, all that.
I move to go into closed session.
Okay, so
Based
who
on-
participate, so,
Based upon a periodic evaluation that the employee wants in closed session. Is that correct?
Based on, yeah,
Okay.
the language is, put forth by our village attorney.
All right, guys, I'll have you leave. Go ahead and lock the door.
Need a second.
yeah, we need a second for
Second,
that.
yes.
Got a motion to go in closed session, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. I'll just do an open vote. All in favor of going into closed session, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Yeah, sorry, opposed. We have one.
One, okay, it passes, I'll leave you in the majority.